He woke up inside his favorite game as a nobody noble, far from the main story. All he wanted was a quiet, low-profile life with zero flags raised. Then he met the final boss, on day 1. Now every villain, demon vessel, and walking red flag is weirdly obsessed with him. The closer he is to death, the stronger and more irresistible he becomes. If fate wants him dead, why do all the villains keep falling in love? Ignore destiny or charm every walking apocalypse. Let's go. The butterfly effect states that the fate of all humanity can change because of one seemingly insignificant event. A pretty bad phenomenon, in Dowd's opinion. After all, until now he'd only done small things that he regretted. He was distracted from his thoughts by a loud knock on the door and Elnor's voice, calling him cute and asking if he was listening. She knew he was there. He'd better open that door nicely. She'd already questioned Ophelia, the dorm manager, and she'd said he didn't have any scheduled classes today. He wasn't going to ignore her forever, was he? MC felt uneasy. Stalkers like that were hard to find. Since he didn't answer, the girl decided to take a different approach. She thrust her sword into the door, exclaiming that she would then cut her own way out, and he thought she was crazy. To stop her, he excitedly exclaimed, "Isn't that breaking the rules? The student council president is supposed to punish those who don't follow the rules." She swung her sword a few more times, cutting the door into tiny pieces, then kicked it open and walked into the room, saying that unfortunately for him, she was the student council president. He had to cover his face to keep the wooden splinters from piercing him, and she asked how many more times he planned to run from her. He ignored her a whopping 32 times. He asked in shock, was she even keeping count? She walked up to him, glared at him, and said she would ask the same question again. Was he going to marry her? He excitedly asked her to wait, and Saras's voice was heard next to him, calling Elnor Princess Tristan, and asking what kind of nonsense she was talking about. She dared to harass another man? So this is what her family's methods are? She glared at her and asked if it was too bright in here for an assassin. There were also plenty of witnesses. She responded by sticking her tongue out at her and saying that she would just kill them all. That was her code. Dowd became incredibly nervous and exclaimed that they were putting him in a difficult position. He hadn't even thought about marriage. At that moment, another woman burst into his room, crashing through the ceiling with her powerful body. It was Lilu. All eyes immediately turned to her, and she called out to Dowd with a smile, telling him to choose her. Everything was ready for the wedding. He just needed to go with her. Yuria came running at the noise, swinging her chains at her rivals and exclaiming that it was rude. She turned to Dowd and asked what he'd been doing that only arrogant women had gathered around him. As his fiancée, she couldn't stand by. It turns out there was another candidate for the bride, the fire sorceress Fainal, who burst into the room and told them all to shut up. Dowd Campbell was hers. Now there was only one way out. A competition. The girls started fighting, and the MC, finding himself in the middle of all this chaos, exclaimed, "Why can these girls only hear themselves?" And then the question arises, how did it come to this? Let's rewind a little to when he first found the survival game that put him in this predicament. It's called Savior Rising. It's a story about young academy students, full of youth and freshness. The game has weeaboo vibes, but the characters are quite familiar, stable. As always, he beat the game and watched the ending, feeling joy and a sense of completion. And then suddenly the next day it happened. He found himself in Dowd's body. When he opened his eyes, his first thought was, what the hell? He didn't even complain about the game, which could have angered the godlike developer, and he wasn't particularly attached to the protagonist. Basically, he inhabited the body of Dowd Campbell. And it's not that he doesn't have any special power. He's essentially a no-name, a third-rate character in this world. His father is a viscount of farming lands, ordinary and safe lands, of which the empire is full. They are barely mentioned in the game's cutscenes. So, the viscount's son enters the Imperial Academy, and from that moment on, history takes a turn. Before leaving home, MC said goodbye to his father. He cried so bitterly, not wanting to part with the pride of their viscountcy, and told him to take care of himself there, and not to cause trouble. Elfonte is a place where all the young people of noble blood gather. The best the son of a simple viscount can do is not attract unnecessary attention. MC smiled nervously, saying he understood, and then the system appeared. It showed him his stats, and of course, everything was very low ranked. Skills, mastery, and special gift, all absent. The sight made him uneasy. Even he, a game veteran, had never seen such trashy starting stats. His current main quest was to enter the academy and be assigned to Class A. According to the game mechanics, ignoring the main quest would be game over, as then Elfonte, the academy he was enrolling in, would plunge into chaos, torn apart by the atrocities of evil characters. He couldn't risk his peaceful existence, and so he swore to his father that he would try his best not to attract unnecessary attention and not harbor unnecessary dreams of raising the reputation of their viscountcy. His father hesitated, because that's not what he meant at all, and he finally promised him that he would make sure his grades at the academy were slightly below average, so no one would care. What kind of protagonist does everything on their own? So the best thing they can do alone is not attract attention. Let student life begin. The only thing from his house to the academy was a train, and by pure chance, Elnor was riding on it, even in the same carriage with him. The whole way, he couldn't take his eyes off her, watching her every move, and he was very nervous. It's all about her role in the game. Elnor is bloody. Elnor has mountains of the dead behind her. Elnor Elinalise La Tristan. She is the final boss of this world. According to the script, She fights the protagonist until she finally goes mad. The ancient essence of the gray demon within her gradually consumes her body and turns her into the final boss, who must be fought by the protagonist who provoked her transformation. Elnor had noticed him staring at her for a long time, and without looking up from her book, she asked if she should call him a doctor. His complexion left much to be desired. He nervously told her that he was fine, and she said that the Duchy of Tristan was very concerned about its public image. Putting her in a regular carriage instead of an A-class carriage was a deliberate decision meant to demonstrate their closeness to the people. She was sorry to disturb him. She often sees this expression on the faces of those who have had the chance to ride in the same carriage with her. He was slightly surprised by her words. She was different from the one he remembers. She is usually described as arrogant, domineering, and a perfectionist. Could she really have a kind side? Since he didn't answer her, she asked what was the matter. Was something else bothering him? He smiled awkwardly and told her that everything was fine. She was just unexpectedly kind. She looked up from her book and looked up at him, asking what his expectations were then. Then he realized he had said too much, and she asked if they even knew each other. He worriedly told her that he had just heard that she was quite strict. She returned her gaze to the book and sighed, noticing that he was strange. He became flustered and said that that was actually all he had heard, after which he reminded himself that he was a side character and was not allowed to get involved with her. He would just stare blankly out the window. The scenery here really was magnificent, and the flying boulders were quite beautiful. And then he realized that there shouldn't be flying boulders here at all, especially burning ones, and his gaze instantly widened. He called out to the student council president and pounced on her, asking for her forgiveness beforehand, after which a huge burning boulder fell on the train, causing a powerful explosion. Thanks to the skeleton armor, an artifact Elnor always carries with her, he was able to avoid being crushed. He grabbed her tighter, mentally asking for her forgiveness, but with his F-level stats, he wouldn't survive that. The girl, meanwhile, was slightly surprised. When it was over, she asked if he was okay and asked if he could let go of her. He was heavy, after all. Realizing that he was lying on top of her, his face buried in her chest, he immediately jumped up and nervously apologized to her. She indifferently looked away and said that everything was fine. After all, he was trying to save her. It was the first time she had been pressed so close to a man, but she was grateful to him. She understood his intentions, so he didn't have to apologize. Actually, Dowd only rushed toward her because of the protective artifact, but he decided to keep that quiet. After that, the girl stood up and fixed her hair, asking his name. He was in no hurry to answer her, because if he did, they would most likely continue to clash. He should ask what would happen if he answered her, but the system decided everything for him. Without realizing it, he told her his name, and she said she would remember it, and she would definitely repay him later. The system informed him that he had attracted the Villainess's attention. The conditions for a special gift had been met. He received the skills Desperate Survival and Deadly Charm. He stared at her in shock, not understanding how it all happened, and soon several ambulances arrived at the burning train. Most likely, the train was attacked because it was going to Alfonte, but thanks to special security measures, there weren't many ordinary people there, so almost no one was hurt except for Dowd. He was put in a carriage and immediately given first aid. He screamed in pain, despite the fact that no one even had time to touch him. After that, they kindly agreed to give all the victims a ride to the city. While they were on the way, MC opened the system and saw what he had received. The first gift is the Fateful Charm. He receives rewards if he attracts the attention of villains. He thought it was unsurprising that he couldn't figure out the conditions no matter how hard he tried. There were no villains in Viscounty Campbell, in that idiotic happy place. Not even neutral ones could be found. That's why the gift hadn't been revealed to him. He decided to check out other rewards. With the Desperate Survival skill, his stats would increase as needed, the effect depending on the threat level, and the Deadly Charm skill made it easier to attract the attention of villains. The more extreme the situation, the stronger the effect. He thought that Desperate Survival would definitely come in handy in battle and help him survive adversity. But what was the point of Deadly Charm? His gaze caught on the words about it being easier to attract the attention of villains, and it made him uneasy. Among the villains, there was a mad warrior who lived only for battle, a crazy sword goddess, ready to cut down anyone who came more than 3 steps closer, a cruel killer capable of killing anyone for money, and a genius woman who was burdened by her surroundings. Tears welled up in his eyes. These women were terribly nasty. Taking a deep breath, he pulled himself together and thought, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. The important thing is that he gained a survival skill. The only strange thing is that his rank isn't showing. He's played this game for so long, but he's never seen anything like this before. What does this mean? The doctor, who had been watching his expression the whole time, asked doubtfully if he was sure he was okay or if he should check him. He told him that everything was fine, then got out of the carriage. It turned out they'd dropped him off right at the academy, and now he was about to enroll. He went to the entrance ceremony, and while someone was giving a boring speech, he thought. Before going to the academy, the doctor said he'd heard he was traveling with Princess Tristan. He's the son of a viscount without connections, right? He's also an Elfante graduate, and also from a minor noble family. He doesn't think the boulder landed in their carriage by accident, does he? Tristan's family has a lot of enemies, and it's in his best interest to avoid interacting with them, otherwise he might get hurt. But when the system told him he'd attracted attention, he'd already managed to unwittingly become entangled with her. In this gossipy academy, it was no surprise that she'd become a candidate for the final boss. Even breathing near her was deadly. Suddenly, someone called out loudly, distracting him from his thoughts. It was the professor, displeased that everyone had already found a sparring partner except him. The other students laughed at him, calling him a bumpkin, but he ignored it and remembered that the practical test immediately followed the entrance ceremony. The professor said that since he hadn't found anyone, he would assign an opponent himself. He smiled awkwardly and inquired who they'd actually assigned him, nervously thinking that if everyone had already paired off, the strongest was likely still standing. A girl's friendly voice pulled him from his thoughts. She extended her hand, inviting him into the arena, and with a smile, asked if he needed help. Upon seeing her, he became very nervous as he recognized her. His opponent turned out to be Ilya Kresonax, a world genius, a future savior, and the protagonist of the game Savior Rising. He extended his hand to her and realized that things were bad. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the student council was tense as everyone awaited Lady Tristan's arrival. The student council's secretary, Beatrix, warily rested her head on her hand and wondered if she had gone crazy. The duels for the entrance exam were about to begin, and she was late. The students asked her when Lady Tristan would arrive, and at that very moment, the door to the office swung open and Elnor entered, but her appearance slightly alarmed everyone present. She plunged her sword into the table where Beatrix was sitting, but she ignored it and said that she had a ton of questions. But first let her tell her where she had been all this time. She firmly answered that she was dealing with something, and the girl, sighing heavily, asked everyone to leave as she needed to sort something out with her. After that, she asked if there were any casualties, and she answered that there were about 12. They tried to kill her, threw a boulder at the academy train, hoping to make it look like an accident. She quickly identified them and finished them off. Beatrix said that she should have left this to the academy, and she answered that it was stressful. She didn't think that she would be a good girl like everyone else, did she? Forgiving even those who attempted on her life? She decided not to touch on the topic anymore, and told her to change her clothes first. The applicants' duels were about to begin. If she hurried, she might be able to intercept Ilya, a genius, 1 in a million. She was currently fighting some Dowd. Elnor asked Dowd Kimball. She confirmed it and asked, "Do they know each other?" "Well, there's nothing special about him." Elnor remembered how he smiled awkwardly in front of her and said with a smile that he was a bit of an oddball. Meanwhile, MC stood in the arena, shaking with fear. Everyone called him a hillbilly and were just waiting for a funny show. He glanced at his opponent and thought that his stats were terrible. If he got hit, he'd be done for. But maybe that's only to his advantage. This is a dangerous fight, right? He has nothing to lose because he has the skill, desperate survival. His stats will increase as needed. The effect depends on the threat level. He glanced at the crowd of students and thought that there were definitely villains here. He was sure of it. If he didn't die, he would be able to attract their attention. This would give him an advantage in terms of stat growth, meaning he would survive. Noticing how he was shaking, Ilya called out to him and asked him to tell the truth. He is very weak, right? He became nervous, not knowing what to say to this, and she pointed out that she was right. She wanted to beat him, but at this rate, she was afraid he would not be able to withstand it. He stared at her in shock and asked why she did that. She told him that he was the guy who was traveling with the heiress of the Tristan family, and she hated her. And not just her entire family. They were pure devils. He mentally noted that this was quite a bold statement, although she was not entirely wrong. According to history, she had many reasons to hate Tristan. He understood family dramas and all that, but they were just riding in the same carriage. When he said the last words out loud, she said that now he reminded her of her. It irritated her. So she was going to take her anger out on him, but she thinks it's better to just pretend they're fighting. It sounded tempting to Dowd, but if he doesn't grow up in the next few days, his life will be in danger. So his only chance is to get recognition here and now. He nervously answered her that she could vent on him. After all, he actually liked her. And then the girl's gaze suddenly changed. She gripped the sword tighter and asked, "Is he serious?" In fact, he wasn't. But this was the only way to make her give it her all, and he provoked her even more, saying that he was as serious as her hatred for her. The system informed him that the deadly charm had been activated. The villain's attention to him had increased significantly, and a reward had been added to the list of gifts. Ilya said that she wasn't going to hold back then, after which she immediately pounced on him and swung her weapon, breaking his wooden sword. The blow would have almost reached his face, but he managed to deflect his body downward. She noticed with surprise that he dodged it. It turns out he's not that weak after all. She decided to add a little power and lunged forward, and then the system began to inundate him with messages. Threat detected, but not fatal. Desperate survival activated at EX rank. MC wasn't going to simply dodge and tolerate her attacks, and so he struck the girl back right in the face. But when he realized that EX rank was the highest rank, meaning its power would be very great, It was too late. Ilya flew out of the arena at high speed and crashed into the wall with a roar. MC and everyone else were shocked, and he certainly attracted the attention of the villains as well. And that's how Dowd Campbell, an F rank according to stats, successfully defeated a world-class talent on his very first day at the academy. Meanwhile, the academy management was monitoring the entrance exams. Conrad Baltador, dean of the nightly faculty, said that most likely, this Dowd is just a first-class swindler. His colleague noted that he quickly changed his mind about him, and he exclaimed that otherwise it was simply nonsense. Anyone who can see understands that right before the duel, he had neither skill nor strength, but that blow was simply something. No one in Alphonte could stand against such a thing, including him. His chances of defeating the potential future hero, Ilya, were zero, but with the help of an illegal potion or tool, or perhaps some method, he was able to temporarily increase his strength. Of course, there is another option, that he is an absolutely monstrous genius. Silence reigned in the assembly hall for a few seconds, after which the rector of the academy, Atalante Swansong, said that his victory was difficult to explain, but Margraf Kendred, Ilya's sponsor, would not let it go so easily. But the academy cannot ignore a potential genius either, so they believe it will soon become clear whether he is a fraud or not. They will simply continue to watch him. The man asked what this would give them, and she replied that there were many interesting newcomers this year, many so unique that they required a special approach. If this student had something special, as he said, he would definitely find his place among them. After that, news of Dowd's resounding victory flew across all the newspapers, but their choice of photo was unfortunate. He glanced at it and thought, this news is everywhere. Are they serious? The system notified him that his profile had been updated with an award. Elnor's trust level is up to level 2. Baron Armit, Viscount Looper, and many others have shown interest in him, for which he has received many points. He thought, so first he needs to attract attention, then interest, and then trust, and can he spend the points earned in the store? Elnor still has the highest affection level. But how did the final boss, who should not care about him, get such a level of trust? After that, the system informed him that he received the Elnor reward, the fencing technique of the Tristan family. This surprised him greatly, because they are very famous for their fencing skills. The only problem is that they are associated with demons, so what difference does it make now? Ilya also appeared in the character sheet. At the moment, her curiosity towards him is at level 4, but this is not enough to receive the reward. He was surprised, because he did not understand that she forgot along with them. Boons are given only for villains who are interested in him, but she is not a villain, and he does not need to be interested in her. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door, frightening him, and this stranger asked, Dowd lives here, right? He immediately had a feeling that this voice was familiar to him, and then the stranger behind the door said that it was Ilya. Can she come in? This made him very surprised and nervous. What is she doing here? Maybe she'll leave him alone if he stays quiet? The girl, meanwhile, pressed her ear to the door and said that she knew he was there, after which she continued pounding on the door with her fists and threatened him that if he remained silent, she would force her way into his room. He indignantly called her crazy and she asked, so he was actually inside? Maybe he would open the door for her? She wanted to tell him something. He nervously asked what she wanted, and she said that since things had turned out this way, she wanted to get to know him better. He was shocked. This was not the outcome he expected. Since he no longer answered her, she decided not to wait for him like a dog at the door, and left, discontentedly saying that she would not leave it like this. How he irritated her. She remembered how, after her defeat, she offered him friendship while she was being taken to the infirmary, and thought that something was wrong with this guy. She has no idea how to be friends with boys at all. Because of her thoughts, she didn't notice the girl walking in front of her and collided with her, causing her to drop the bag. Ilya immediately crouched to pick it up, and the girl annoyedly said that she should watch where she was going. Ilya wanted to apologize to her, but as soon as she looked up, she froze in place. Elnor was in front of her. She extended her hand, asking if she was hurt, but she remained silent, as she was currently immersed in memories of her brother. A huge column of fire threatened them, but Tristan remained there to protect her. The girl's face darkened. She told Elnor that she was fine, and at that moment she realized that she instinctively clutched her sword. Would she even be able to defeat her at her current level? Elnor reached out to take the bag, and Ilya stared at her in surprise, thinking that she must have seen her reaction. So, why did she remain silent? Or was she hinting that she didn't even deserve her reaction? The girl asked her to give her the package back, and she handed it to her with trembling hands, wondering how Dowd even contacted her. After that, Elnor went further, and the girl told her that Dowd's room was right down the hall, all the way to the end. She was about to leave, but Elnor stopped her, asking how she knew where his room was. When she answered that she was just coming from there, she frowned and asked why she went there. Not understanding why she was so angry with her, she smiled awkwardly and told her that she wanted to be friends with him, like a newbie with a newbie. Elnor sternly said that newbies are forbidden from interacting with men, and she asked in confusion, "Is there such a rule?" She answered her that this rule had just been made. From now on, she is forbidden to approach his room. Still perplexed, Ilya asked what her relationship was with him, and she, continuing on her way, answered answered that she had no relationship with him. However, she should remember her words well. Ilya remembered what Dowd said to her in the arena and thought that there was definitely something between them. At least for the sake of information, she had to get closer to him. Time passed. The class placement exam at Elefante Academy is aimed at a detailed analysis of the students' aptitudes. After a one-on-one duel, everyone is divided into groups, and since MC defeated a world genius, he is assigned to the upper class. Everyone here looks proud. Only he is shaking with fear. The biggest problem is this girl. Ilya constantly pesters him. Yesterday, he hit her hard, and now they are in the same group. He checked her character information and learned that her curiosity level continues to grow, and the chance of her interest has also increased. Since she is an important character, as soon as her affection status changes, a special event will occur. He didn't understand what was going on, why her interest only continued to grow. They'd slipped some treats under his door last night, along with a note wishing him good luck on tomorrow's tests. So someone was stalking him? Why was he in trouble? The professor called the first group, and he sighed heavily, thinking he needed to focus on the test. In theory, there shouldn't be any incidents. After all, it was part of the main scenario. The system notified him that since Elnor's trust level had reached level 2, a new event would soon be available. And then she appeared. It turned out she would be responsible for this test today. He glanced at her and thought it was definitely no coincidence. He knew an event with her was coming, but for her to literally be responsible for them, it would be strange now if nothing happened. In fact, this was all the work of the Academy's management. They were curious to see how he would perform during the upcoming class assignments, so they appointed the student council president in charge. Elnor waved her hand, inviting the students to first teleport to the testing grounds. She would answer any questions they had upon arrival. As they walked there, a boy named Luca looked around in surprise and noted that a lot of effort had clearly been put into it. His friend told him to be quiet and follow him, and soon they found themselves in a dark hall. The students began looking around excitedly, saying that this was a truly amazing place, and they approached the statue in the center. Ilya reminded Elnor that she had said she would answer all their questions once they got there. So, is this part of the test? She remained silent, since this was all not according to plan, and Dowd thought he could answer that question himself. The entrance was sealed, and the lights went out. The system informed him that the Elnor event was beginning, and he sighed heavily, realizing that this wasn't a test at all, but a trap. This event was an assassination attempt. The surviving assassins are still pursuing Elnor, so he needs to protect her. The student council president's unresponsiveness has them on edge, and one of the students says they need to go in case something else happens. MC stays back and watches the group closely. They're all members of the protagonist's group, and if he remembers the script correctly, they all first met here. It turns out the people in this room are quite important to the events unfolding. He pointed to the map behind him and said that he thought it would be best to move to the central hall. The students were surprised that the map had been there all this time, and he explained to them that the central hall could contain useful equipment and other supplies. Plus, the room was large, so it would be easier for them to defend themselves in case of an attack. His last words made some students nervous, and Dowd turned to the president and Ilya, saying that they probably felt it. They were not alone here. They remained silent, and he said that he would stay here, and Ilya immediately asked about the reason. He answered her that it was necessary, and she indignantly exclaimed, "Why?" After all, they were now far from the central hall. He answered her with a serious expression that he couldn't say it now, but it was important. He would explain the details later. In fact, it really was important, so he wasn't lying. What could be more important than saving your own life, right? When they left, he breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed his victory over Ilya had given his words added credibility. He decided to hide until it was all over. Elnor was the target anyway, and they didn't care about him. He just hid in some corner and waited out. But the system decided otherwise. A man's voice suddenly rang out behind him, saying he needed to fix the light. Could he tell him where to go? He just had trouble finding his way in the dark. The system immediately detected a threat, although it was already obvious from his creepy face. Meanwhile, the group reached the main hall, and Trisha asked Ilya if she thought Dowd could handle it alone. What if something happened? She said that he definitely has some kind of plan. And anyway, right now they needed to worry about themselves. The killers had been hiding in the ceiling beams this whole time, and Elnor had noticed them long ago. Meanwhile, MC was leading that suspicious man down the hallway, and he looked at him with a smirk, thinking that the advanced team would have already been defeated by this she-devil if he weren't there. He easily outsmarted even this guy. Dowd led him to the entrance to the supply room, and he thought that a professional killer like him could immediately assess a person's level just by watching their movements. And this guy is a complete amateur. He'll play with him for a bit and then eliminate him. His body will make an excellent bait for Lady Tristan. Hearing some strange sounds behind him, MC turned around, and the man, right before his eyes, tore off his disguise and pulled out a knife, saying that it was time for the reward. But to his surprise, the guy sighed with relief and said that it was just him, Hazmed. The man stared at him in confusion, and he said that if it were someone stronger, he would have wet his pants with fear. It's truly such a relief. The way he moves while walking, and the endless sniffling. He's the same old man he remembers. His desperate survival skill is now at rank A. The man gritted his teeth in irritation and wondered what kind of nonsense he was talking about. He was speechless. but he was still just a weakling, so he'd deal with him in a jiffy. After that, Dowd pulled out his weapon, a stick, and attacked Hazmed, while the students encountered the assassins but quickly dealt with them. Some were even surprised that they were weaker than they thought. Ilya turned to Palkas and asked him to freeze them, then wondered where Elnor was. She, meanwhile, had taught a group of assassins a lesson with her sword technique. It only took one move for her to slam them all into the wall. The blow was so strong that blood gushed from their mouths, and when one of them fell, Elnor threateningly thrust her sword into his hand and asked if their people were still around. He cried out loudly in pain, and she said that she would break his neck if he did not answer her. After that, they cuffed the hands of all the survivors with ice, and one of the assassins told them about Hazmed of the Crescent Moon. Elnor asked if he was in the building or somewhere nearby, and he told her that he could not say. She immediately struck him, pinning his head to the floor, and asked if this assassin was among them. He cried out in pain as she pressed his head even harder, and he exclaimed that he came in with them. Ilya asked why they would go so far, and Elnor told her that they were trying to kill her. Hazmed of the Crescent Moon is an assassin who can take on the appearance of the person he has killed. And who do they think is the easiest target for him now? Ilya only thought of one person, and asked, so Dowd used himself as bait to lure out the strongest opponent. But these assassins came for her. Why does he need all this? What's going on between them? Elnor exclaimed that she said there was nothing between them, at least from what she knew. Ilya frowned. Meanwhile, Hazmed was under pressure. He thought he was a professional assassin, and here was the soul of a guardian, a barrier in which the use of weapons was prohibited. And the barrier only reacts to weapons, so where did this come from? However, this academy is an ancient, mysterious place, so there's nothing surprising. But it doesn't matter, because he is a killer and a weapon in his own right. So why is he being beaten with some kind of stick right now? MC lunged, dealing him a powerful blow, and the system informed him that he had successfully mastered the movements, increasing his effectiveness in using the Tristan fencing technique. The guy exhaled, and Hazmed thought, is this a Tristan fencing technique? He shouldn't have messed with him. Trying to catch his breath after all his blows, he said that he had fooled him. Who was he? At that moment, the deadly charm was activated, and the villain trembled before his flawless plan. In fact, there was a save point in this room, and MC lured him here, since the system prevented the use of weapons here. Hazmed chuckled and said that he probably wouldn't get an answer from him. If that's the case, then let him kill him. He replied that he didn't need his death. Let him tell the others not to approach Lady Tristan, and add that even an assassin like him was on the verge of death. He thought he didn't know who the customer was, but he was sure they wouldn't give up, which meant the likelihood of the Grey Demon being released from Elnor was only increasing. Then he needs to nip this opportunity in the bud. The man smirked and asked what would happen if he came again. He threateningly replied that he would beat him again then, since he would protect her next time too. Hazmed asked, so she was so important to him? He allowed for this possibility. And at that very moment, the man looked somewhere behind him, and the system informed him that the deadly charm had been activated, and the villainess's favor was rapidly growing. It turned out that at that moment, Elnor had entered the room and overheard their conversation, which was why the system was now inundating him with messages. He turned around in confusion, not understanding what was going on, and saw her. A new day had dawned, and Beatrix was simply horrified. She hit her head on the table and exclaimed that it was a complete mess. She understands the rector, of course, but immediately tracked down the organizer. She has a ton of work as it is. The academy is a bloody mess right now. This means there were spies among them. They were the ones who smuggled the enemy inside and bought time for the assassination. She told Elnor that she understands that she will be a frequent target due to political strife. But this is already the second assassination attempt. Their persistence is simply incredible. The girl stared dreamily at the ceiling and, without listening at all, agreed with her. And she noted that this incident is a little different. Whoever was behind this, they will definitely attack again. Everyone who was with her is now revered as heroes, and everyone accepted this honor without objection. Everyone except Dowd. He didn't get a word of gratitude. Why shouldn't he celebrate with everyone? She doesn't see the logic in this. It's as if he is deliberately avoiding the attention of the academy group. She agreed with her, and she exclaimed that if she agreed with her again without thinking, she would beat her. She answered her that she could do whatever she wanted. After which, Beatrix in a rage threw an inkwell at her and exclaimed, what was wrong with her? Elnor deftly caught it and asked, what was wrong with her? She answered her that she had been daydreaming about something all day. Why couldn't she concentrate? She didn't know what had happened to her. But if she didn't tell, she wouldn't help her anymore. She answered her that she was very interested in someone, and the girls stared at her in surprise, thinking that she had misheard. She asked who exactly interested her, and she answered her that she had just mentioned him recently. She asked, so this is Dowd Campbell? Elnor remained silent, and she raised an eyebrow in bewilderment, asking in surprise, did she like this country bumpkin? She pointed out that she hadn't said anything like that yet, and the girl said she didn't know what he'd done to her. But she should just imagine what the Archduke would say when word got back to him. Elnor put the inkwell back and told her the old geezer wouldn't be thrilled, and she wasn't in love with him. Beatrix, of course, didn't believe her, and, clutching her head warily, asked, Whatever the case, he had been kind to her, hadn't he? Normally, she would have immediately suspected him. She had to be more careful as the lady of House Tristan. Elnor agreed with her, but she had already tested him. She would simply continue to keep an eye on him. Beatrix didn't understand what she meant. Meanwhile, MC read the letter, the contents of which left him perplexed. The academy management informed him that, unfortunately, they could not yet assign him to a specific class. The academy team was working hard to make the right decision, so he should wait for further news. He said that it wasn't that he was waiting for anything, that they should just stick him in a regular class and forget about it. Actually, according to the rules, he should have been assigned to a special class, like the entire Ilya group. Why was he the only one left out? At that moment, system messages appeared in front of him. The first main task was successfully completed. The information was updated. A new main task had appeared. He needed to resolve the incident that would unfold at the first-year sorting ceremony. As a reward, he will receive an exclusive equipment material. The first-year sorting ceremony is an event where each student is assigned a class: archer, warrior, mage, priest, and so on. Specialization depends on skills and predispositions. Just like Ilya wields a sword, he focuses on the strength tree of development. Therefore, he will be given an exclusive equipment material that will correspond to his choice. The only problem is that the same events are scheduled for both the boss and the main character. In addition, Elnor's trust level increased to level 5. He clutched his head, sensing that something grand was coming. After which the system informed him that he had received Elnor's gift. He had one skill available for copying. He could copy one skill from the target. He was very surprised by this news and thought, so he can copy the final boss's skill? Using it now would be a huge loss. She may already be at the top of the academy, but like Ilya, the main character, she is still developing. Later, she will acquire a multitude of cheating skills, so using copying is pointless for now. He needs to prepare for the event that will unfold in 3 days. Luckily, he knows one thing that will help him survive it successfully. As soon as night fell, he went to the obsolete equipment warehouse, equipped with the Mask of Shadows, which increases agility, and Cat's Paw Slippers, which increase stealth. He also took a speed potion, which increases agility. After he got past all the security measures, a place for the game's true tryharders opened up before him, a treasure farming point. He snuck into the warehouse through the window, then ate a cookie, which replenished his stamina. It sounds like third-rate advertising, but the effect is real. Now it was time to look around. He approached a huge pile of things and began searching. He found a lot of things here, but the most important was this: the Divine Ultima, a sensor, smoking with the ancient power that had lain hidden within it for millennia, was precisely what he had come for. Having collected everything he needed, he was about to leave, but suddenly this enormous pile of rubbish began to tremble, all because of the sensor. It held the entire structure together. He looked up in horror, following the movement of each crate, and when all the rubbish fell on him, he was frightened and thought that he had known it all along, that everything couldn't be that simple. Then there was a crash. He survived, and somehow a girl fell into his arms. It was Yuria. He stared at her in shock and realized it was Yuria Greyhounder, the boss of Chapter 2, nicknamed the Cursed Sword Goddess, and the item he had taken originally belonged to her. So, she was a regular here. As soon as the girl opened her eyes, she immediately climbed out of his arms and disappeared into the darkness, and the system warned him of the threat. Since this threat posed a threat to his life, desperate survival was activated at EX rank. Yuria quickly appeared behind him, and he, still looking for her with his eyes, apologized for waking her. He wanted to explain to her what he was doing there, but she immediately swung her weapon, and there was a crash. Heavy chains broke the crates into splinters. Dowd barely managed to dodge her blade, leaning his body back, and then defended himself from her blow with the sensor, causing a loud clang. That time, it was a simple duel with Ilya, but now it was a matter of life and death. He nervously gritted his teeth, glancing at Yuria, and when she was about to strike him again, he excitedly raised his hands and exclaimed that she had misunderstood everything. He hadn't intended to do anything while she was sleeping. Despite his EX strength, his entire body was already aching, so he wanted to stop the fight as quickly as possible. But the girl didn't listen to him. She swung the chain again, and he had to jump to avoid the blow, after which she attacked again, but this time much more furiously. Luckily, MC knew how to avoid her blow. He took a few steps, pressing himself against the wall, and when she threw the blade at him again, it stopped just a few centimeters from his face. The range is 3.5 steps. Any enemy within this radius will be defeated, but now she can't take a step closer. This is the mechanism of her curse. However, escaping is also impossible. The girl asked him to take a step closer, and he asked why, so that she would kill him? She confirmed this, and suddenly in the ensuing silence, a loud rumbling of the stomach was heard. An idea immediately came to Dowd's mind. This is her personal area. She should be isolated from everyone else. Even the teachers don't come here, which means she's hungry. He offered her a cookie, and she irritably replied that she wouldn't fall for that. Was he seriously considering bribing her with food? But as soon as he threw the cookie, she caught it like a little dog. Apparently, she was really hungry. After that, she admitted that she shouldn't have attacked him, and he thought that it was really hard to reason with a hungry woman. He sighed with relief because he almost died, and she asked who he was and why he was here. After all, he was here to steal, but he couldn't tell her that. He told her that he was entrusted with feeding her. An acquaintance asked him to look after her. She asked who the acquaintance was, and he thought that if everything was handled correctly, it would come in handy in the future. Yuria is usually not encountered this early in the game. He told her that her sister was living well in the Holy Empire, so she shouldn't worry. The Emperor doesn't care about either of them yet, but it's obviously better for them to lie low. Having promised to return, he left and thought that Yuria was actually from the Holy Empire. The reason she was forced to hide in the academy was the Emperor of the Holy Empire. Yuria's sword was a well-known tool of the forces of evil, so being bound by the vessel of this sword, she suffered from a 3-stage curse. So he thought it would be a good idea to tell her about the situation of her only remaining family member. She had been through a lot and did not have much hope. A new day had dawned, and the headmistress Ophelia gathered all the first years for a tour. They climbed a high hill from which all the buildings of the academy were visible, and she said that they would have to choose a major minor during the entrance ceremony for newcomers, which would take place in a couple of days. Knighthood, magic, engineering, crafts, and theology. They should be familiar with these faculties. One of the students asked if the tribal associations in the Holy Empire shared their values. She confirmed this and said that they teach things like the heat of battle or the teachings of the Great Temple, so they shouldn't even think about transferring to another academy. After that, she laughed and decided to explain to them a little more about the main faculties. MC didn't listen to her at all. This is a tutorial event where the player receives information about the structure of this world. It's a pity that it can't be simply skipped, but then all his work will be in vain. One of the students peered into the distance and asked, "Is this the famous Void Zone?" Their gaze moved to the huge dome in the distance, and Ophelia said that this is a forbidden zone. They will be punished if they go there. Dowd knew what this place was. It is a remnant of the historical war between hell and heaven. There, the messengers of the gods, warriors who received their powers, held back the demons. Hundreds of years have passed, but the clashes of light and dark energies still continue. This zone is of utmost importance if the demons break out again. So the Holy Empire, the tribal alliances, and their empire created a golden triangle to keep the situation under control. This triangle includes Elfonte and the other academies. Luca raised his hand and asked the headmistress if they could come a little closer to the dome to take a look. She thought for a moment and said that standing at the edge of a seraph's protective barrier was acceptable. They were safe inside. MC smiled, having a plan for today. Take a walk, eat, and return. However, he had something else on his mind. An angel known for moving mountains and drying up oceans, and a seraphim one level higher, created this barrier. Thanks to this, the academy can exist peacefully next to such a dangerous zone. Ophelia led them to a cliff next to the barrier, and said they would stop there for a snack, which the students were very happy about. It was time to put the plan into action. Dowd approached her, asking if he could eat a little further away from the others. He just felt a little uncomfortable here. Ophelia felt a little sorry for him, since many of his classmates were talking about him after what happened, and so she allowed him to eat separately, but asked him not to stray too far, otherwise he would get into a lot of trouble. After that, he left, and one of the students, looking after him, irritably said that this redneck was showing off just because he attracted a little attention. Having settled into a secluded spot, MC began throwing various things into the sensor: crushed unicorn horn, phoenix feather, and coral berry, and it was ready. The divine ultima is a binding sensor, a kind of magical telephone. He blew on it, directing the smoke forward, and it began to swirl. He hoped he hadn't missed anything, because he had come a long way to use it. It allows one to contact entities that people can usually only dream of meeting. After that, the outlines of people appeared in a cloud of smoke, and then a bright flash blinded him, and he began to hear the voices of the beings on the other side of the portal. They were arguing among themselves about the work, and the boss told the newcomer that leveling means digging out excess. He answered him that the ground was too hard, and he said his shovel was harder. It turned out that these workers were angels. The boss, noticing a portal nearby, asked who that person was looking at them. Because of this, the angels felt uneasy about continuing to work, because he was keeping an eye on them, and the boss said that if he remained silent, it was already good. Anything was better than bothering them while they were working. He returned to his subordinate and asked discontentedly why he was frozen. His shovel wasn't even moving. The angel became agitated and immediately started digging, and the MC continued to watch them. Suddenly, a loud horn sounded. A truck drove up to the construction site, and the driver said that the holy clay bricks had arrived and they should unload everything quickly. One of the workers asked how many there were, and the driver answered that there were quite a lot. They pulled the cloth covering the bricks from the back of the truck, and all the angels immediately sighed in disappointment. While they were unloading materials, the driver decided to grab a snack, and the female angel asked why he was eating cloud crackers. He looked at her and asked, "She's a driver too, right?" She told him that she was actually also a soldier, and he advised her to save her energy for driving. Meanwhile, the boss sternly ordered his subordinate to work. His superiors were busy, and he was just lounging around. The angel immediately ran off in agitation. Meanwhile, one of his colleagues asked the woman if the lunch had been delivered yet, and she told him that the delivery was slow. As soon as transportation was established, the food would be delivered, so he should just wait a little longer. Watching them, Dowd smiled and thought that the angels had a good reason not to condescend anywhere. In a word, their community is similar to a military one. They have a clear hierarchy, full of ranks and chains of command. Simply put, other worlds in this game are structured by their own rules. Meeting an angel is possible only after the second chapter, and with a high-ranking angel even later. He knows what they need, something simple and basic. He laid out several boxes of food in front of him and wished everyone a pleasant meal, then continued to stare at the angels. They noticed that he had brought food there, and one of them turned to the boss, asking if they could ask him for a little. His colleague exclaimed with displeasure that he hadn't even met the conditions for leniency. What is he talking about? Let him get moving and carry bricks. Dowd turned to the angels and asked if they would like a snack. They would completely exhaust themselves with this work. After that, he carried all the food to them, and when a small muffin appeared in the boss's hands, he was delighted and gave his subordinates a 10-minute break. They all happily began to eat, and began calling him a kind young man, while he thought that the laws of the other world were different from the material one. For example, one serving would be enough for him to feed them all. After the boss had eaten his fill, he sat down next to the portal and said that he finally had such luxury at work. He asked him to give it to him, but MC didn't understand what he was talking about, and he said that he meant that sensor next to him. He didn't just come for nothing, right? He will bless it, so let him give it to him. Let him say what he wants, but within reason, he will try to fulfill his request in the best possible way. He was surprised and thought, really, unquestioningly? And he had prepared so many trump cards for the negotiations. Was it so simple in the original? The angel's face suddenly became serious, and he asked, is he now thinking about why he immediately went to meet him? Now he will tell him about it. Dowd immediately realized that this was a vision. He sees a person's nature just by looking at him. The angel read his thoughts and noted that he is well informed. He has a gift, but was never able to develop it. It will be very useful to him in the future, so let him try. MC didn't understand what he was talking about. Maybe he means a deadly charm? The angel said that this gift is much stronger than it might seem, but how he uses it is up to him. Because of this, he can be captured by a cruel but loving monster. And then, Dowd got nervous and thought that after he mastered the sensor, he would reconsider all the strategies available to him. He is sure that there is an optimal way to survive. The angel suddenly took the form of a handsome young man and said that a normal person would be overcome with fear, but he is calmly searching for a strategy. He understood everything. He will become a great man. He probably has nothing to worry about. After that, he returned to his image of a tired worker and said that he had already cast the blessing, and he awkwardly thanked him for it. The angel, who heard their conversation, asked if they were even allowed to tell such things to a person. The boss told him to keep carrying bricks, while MC wondered what cruel but loving monster meant, and he also called him a great man? He's overrated. Before returning to work, the angel told him to believe in himself with a smile. He admits that's his worst-case scenario. After that, the portal closed, and Dowd was lost in thought. He's only trying because he doesn't want to die. Still, these are the angel's words, so he needs to think about them carefully. The system informed him that he had obtained a C rank plus divine ultima. It contains the special power of a divine essence from another world, and also includes 2 skills. Asceticism. The skill uses a small amount of mana to temporarily increase constitution. The cooldown is 20 seconds, and the skill can also be upgraded with proof of faith. The second skill, Sacred Barrier, uses a small amount of mana to create a one-time defensive barrier and applies the constitution effect, and can be upgraded with stigmata. MC closed his eyes and thought that the angel was giving him a useful blessing. The constitution effect is essentially a health indicator, and it directly affects survivability. Considering that his desperate survival can increase stats, this will definitely come in handy. But the most important thing is the ability to improve the skill. In the game world, things that can be improved provide real advantages. Getting such things at the very beginning is real luck. The only problem is that they require mana to use. For someone without normal stats, these are just dreams. And since he can't use his mana yet, he will have to use makeshift methods. So he went to the monster research department. While he was thinking about all this, the guy was explaining something to him, but noticing that he was completely not listening, he asked if absent-mindedness was his specialty or what. He answered that he was actually listening carefully, and then he asked if he heard what he said. He told him that he heard every word he said, and the guy reminded him that he said he needed to find a partner. Does he understand what that means? Where is his partner? He told him that his partner would be here soon, and he laughed, asking who would even partner up with such a no-name. Dowd told him that he wasn't lying, and besides, this place would soon get really crowded. The guy, of course, didn't believe him and said that his partner was just not that popular. He glanced at the time and thought that according to the plot, she would arrive soon, and a few seconds later, Ilya finally appeared. She didn't notice Dowd, and asked the guy, "Is this the monster research department?" Dowd waved at her with a smile and thought that he initially didn't want to get involved with the main character, but now he changed his mind, especially after the angel's words. She was slightly surprised to see him there, and he asked if what she said earlier about wanting to get to know each other better still applies. She scratched her head in confusion, and, remembering all those moments hinting at his sympathy for Elnor, she smiled nervously and thought that he was simply incredible. His methods didn't work, and he decided to go with the make her jealous route that she had only heard about. Noticing her expression, MC immediately realized that she was thinking about some nonsense. After that, they went into the imitation dungeon together. When they encountered monsters, Ilya asked doubtfully if he was absolutely sure about this. He asked her to trust him. She wanted to be friends with him, right? Does she remember how she threatened to beat him up when they first met? She told him that it happened, although in the end it was he who beat her. He said that if she wanted to be friends after that, then she should do everything as he asked. He pointed her in the direction of 9 o'clock and warned her about 3 monsters, thanks to which she noticed the wolf that pounced on her in time and killed it. Dowd warned her about another danger, and soon the wolves were finished. It was time for bats. He told the girl that their weak spot is the neck. Let her hit the body, not the wings. She swung her sword several times and asked if maybe he would stop commanding and help her. He told her that he could not do that, after which he warned her about another danger. 2 daggers are flying at her, from the left and from the right. She can simply throw them away, but to do this she needs to wait 10 seconds. Noticing the daggers, she followed his advice one last time and threw them aside. He praised her and said, "Now it's paralyzing poison. The pipe is on the right. Let her break it." She cut the pipe with her sword, then dodged 3 arrows flying from his direction, and then Dowd suddenly warned her about an attack from behind. She immediately turned around and blocked a blow from a huge monster that attacked her in midair, after which she exclaimed in irritation, "Since he knows everything, wouldn't it have been easier for him to fight on his own? They would have cleared the way faster if they worked together." In fact, he wanted to help her, but he couldn't. His character has terrible stats on all fronts. There is no threat from the imitation, so desperate survival simply doesn't work. Everything he sees is fake, so it has pre-programmed movements. Desperate survival is not omnipotent, so he needs to somehow raise his stats. When he was distracted from his thoughts and saw the girl running towards him with a sword at the ready, he smiled nervously and wondered if he had overdone it. But it turned out she was running to his rescue. She killed the monster that had snuck up on him from behind, and he looked up at her in surprise. After that, confetti shot out from all sides, announcing their victory and a new record. Ilya was surprised. She had fought alone, but she had broken the record, even though this dungeon was designed for 2. Despite his appearance, the MC was a veteran of this game, so he knew who would attack from where and how. He smiled and said that they were lucky. The next zone would be more difficult, but she should hold out. He wished her luck, which almost made her boil with rage, but she restrained herself. Meanwhile, the dean of the spells department, Percy, was watching them. She noted that they were doing well. They should probably allocate more funds to stimulate battles next year. She turned to her colleague Conrad and asked his opinion on the matter. He agreed with her, and, patting some guy on the head, asked, "Did their department develop this?" He nervously confirmed it, and said that something else was more important right now. It looked like someone he'd had his eye on was going through the simulation. Percy asked, "Is he talking about that girl, the hero candidate?" She completed the simulation surprisingly quickly, so she was worthy of attention. The man said he was talking about the guy, Dowd Campbell. She raised her eyebrows in confusion and asked, "Is that the swindler who caught his attention?" After all, he was simply exploiting her. Conrad said that this is precisely what irritated him about them, mages. Percy didn't like his words and explained to her that her so-called heroine wouldn't have set the record without him. Any fool would notice how strong this girl is, because she's in the foreground, but the key to victory is him. He leads her, gives commands with perfect timing, notices everything. His every action reflects perfect calculation. He's calculated everything as if he'd been on the battlefield 1,000 times, and so he proposed a bet to his colleague. After that, his voice came over the loudspeakers in the simulation hall. He introduced himself to them and said that he had found it extremely interesting to watch them. He and the dean of the spells department had decided to make a bet. The subject of the bet was whether the 2 of them could break the newbie record. If they could do it, Percy would grant them any request. Percy glared at him because they hadn't discussed this, and he said that if it was a burden to them, he wouldn't force them. Their current record was already incredible, but winning would be almost impossible for them. MC confidently told him they could handle it, which confused Ilya. Percy was outraged by his self-confidence, and Conrad said that since they agreed, he was betting on their success, so let them get started. Meanwhile, Elnor was in the training room, and when Beatrix decided to visit her, she was quite surprised by the devastation around her. She said that she understands that she comes here to release emotions, but this is too much. What was wrong with her? Elnor tiredly asked her for water, and when she tossed her a bottle, She replied that she just wanted to remember something. When she was very young, her mother taught her these moves. She barely remembers them anymore, so she constantly repeats them. She closed her eyes and thought that a demon lurked in Tristan's bloodline. This dark rumor has two sides. One of them implies a superhuman, and the other is a mad monster, ready to break free one day, which entails an outbreak of violence and a gradual fading of consciousness. Could this be the reason why, despite great achievements, Tristan's lifespan is so short? Beatrix worriedly asked if she was overdoing it. Are these all her thoughts? She took a sip of water and told her not to worry. She doesn't think about it anymore. Beatrix decided not to pursue this topic, and Elnor will ask why such caution? She said that nothing worries her anymore. She answered her that she simply had information here, which she asked to be reported immediately. She heard this from her junior. Dowd teamed up with a hero candidate. Elnor was immediately interested and asked who this hero candidate was. She answered her that she was talking about Ilya Krasanax, the same one he fought. She asked, so she means to say they were paired? She confirmed this and added that it probably happened because the battle in the simulator requires two people. Elnor closed her eyes and said that she understood everything, then took a deep breath and asked her to take her there. Beatrix exclaimed that she herself said that she no longer thinks about it, after which the girl headed towards him. Meanwhile, MC took out his sword, and Ilya asked what he was planning. She understands that he has skills, but does he really think that they should challenge the all-time record? He confirmed this, and she noted that his overconfidence is something else. Why even try so hard? He thought that it would be much easier to just farm rewards if he knew the movement patterns of the illusory monsters in the simulator. But he can't answer her that way. He told her that it was all because she was with him, and she said that she didn't really believe it. After that, Conrad contacted them and asked if they were ready. They can set the difficulty however they want, but the higher it is, the more points they get. In this case, Dowd asked for the highest difficulty, and Percy, sighing in exasperation, told him that she simply couldn't believe it. She loves competition, but this was too much. The highest difficulty is close to a real fight. You can even die from it. He told her that even so, he was ready to try, and Conrad asked his colleague to just do as he asked. After that, the simulator activated. Ilya immediately started looking around, and MC told her not to be nervous. She was a hero candidate. The die had already been cast. Percy, meanwhile, decided to have some tea and told Conrad that this was simply incomprehensible. He asked her not to pretend that this was the first time. They had done this with previous first years too. She exclaimed that this time everything was different, they really could die. He told her that everything would be fine. He was sure he had his reasons for taking such a risk, and if it gets too dangerous, they'll just drag them out. After that, a horde of monsters fell from the ceiling onto the students, and the man joyfully exclaimed that massacre mode had been activated and let them go. Ilya cursed loudly. She didn't like this, but they had no choice but to try to fight them. Percy sighed nervously, and her assistant, with tears in her eyes, thought that the simulation was over. Meanwhile, Dowd entered the fray with a confident smile, as the system had detected a threat that was life-threatening. A huge rhinoceros pounced on him from above. He concentrated, then swung his sword, ending it in an instant, and Conrad exclaimed with delight that he knew it. That's what he was waiting for. Did she see that? Percy splashed her tea in surprise, while Ilya exclaimed with a smile that she knew it. MC quickly ran through the crowd of monsters, dealing with each one in his path, and the moment he cut down a larger monster, Percy exclaimed in surprise, how was that possible? He had been completely useless until now. Conrad told her that he was just pretending, but he didn't blame her. He would have reacted the same way if he had witnessed the change in his skills earlier. Over time, monsters become stronger, as did he, which meant they would grow together. Dowd and Ilya continued to fight the monsters side by side, and after a while, the last enemy remained, a huge spider. Ilya plunged her sword into the monster's abdomen and signaled Dowd to act. He pushed off her back and leaped high, landing directly over the monster's head, then used a fencing technique from the Tristan clan, La Volpe. After delivering several powerful blows to the monster, he landed behind it, and Conrad exclaimed with delight that their strength was simply incredible. They were breaking all records. The monster is dead, true, but MC didn't think about where the body would fall. Ilya called out to him, warning him of danger, and when he turned around, he saw the enormous carcass of a spider above him. Fortunately, the dean arrived in time to help, cutting the spider's body into several small pieces, after which he joyfully exclaimed that they had set a record that would not be broken for many years. They got newbies mowing down Elfante's artificial monsters like grass. Ilya was overjoyed to see him, and he thanked her for her efforts. After that, he smirked and told Percy that victory was his, and she teleported to him with a disgruntled expression. She gave them both their rewards, the rental of one item from the Vision Vault and one request, which she would definitely fulfill. Ilya glanced at the receipt and exclaimed that it was so cool, and Dowd noted that not every newbie would be so lucky. Ilya said she had noticed this often before. Why was he always so calm? He didn't understand what she meant, and she said that no matter what happened, his facial expression seemed to indicate that he had foreseen it or expected it, and that was the case in any situation. He mentally answered her that of course, because he knew the plot. After that, she extended her fist towards him, and he raised an eyebrow in confusion, not understanding what she wanted from him. She smiled and said that friends often do that among themselves. He sighed heavily, wondering if she was serious, then punched her fist, and the system informed him that the probability of increasing the affection level had increased. He asked, "Is this normal?" She looked thoughtfully at his hand, then happily said goodbye to him and ran off. Elnor said that she didn't understand whether she was friendly or just weird. MC shook his head, agreeing with her, and when he realized that it was the student council president who said this, he was very surprised. She asked if he liked the new girl. He got very nervous and started mumbling, choosing his words, and thought that it was unlikely that she came to rip his head off, since desperate survival had not activated. However, what did she care? He wasn't her boyfriend or anything like that. Elnor said she would only repeat the question once. Does he like this new girl? At that moment, the system detected a threat and he realized he needed to come up with an excuse quickly. He nervously called out to her and closed his eyes, exclaiming that even though he had trained with Ilya, all this time he had dreamed of seeing only her. She noted that this was quite unexpected. He sighed with relief, wondering what kind of nonsense he was talking about. Why should this work? He was such an idiot. But it really did work. The girl smiled slightly and asked, did he mean to say that he missed her? He confirmed it and she asked why. He hadn't expected such a question and was therefore confused. In the end, he told her that he himself didn't know why he missed her. She shyly touched her hair, although she maintained a calm expression, and told him to forget about it, most likely because of affection. After all, she saved his life on that train. Let him just remember about the priority opinion. He smiled nervously, not understanding what she was talking about, and she, handing him the envelope, told him not to make things up. She just came to give him this. He took it, and a bunch of thoughts immediately flashed through his head. What could this be? A love letter? Or maybe a challenge? What was it? There was no such thing in the original. Elnor said that she wanted to give it to him tomorrow, but decided today. After that, she left, telling him to open it when he was alone, and he looked after her, puzzled. When he returned to the dorm and read her letter, he realized that it would have been better if he hadn't opened it at all. She wants him to be her companion at tomorrow's freshman ceremony, which he had already managed to forget. Accompanying her is a piece of cake. He will just need to be by her side the entire ceremony. The problem is the penalty for refusal. Not only will his affection decrease, but he might also make new enemies. He was distracted from his thoughts by a knock on the door. It turned out to be Ilya. He peeked out of his room and said he knew it was her, and she smiled and noted that he was quite smart. She handed him the envelope, and he asked in surprise, "Again?" She asked, "What does that mean?" Had anyone ever given him something like this before? He lied to her and said it wasn't. What is this? He hoped it wasn't an invitation to be her date, and she winked at him, saying it was a surprise. She had already made this decision in our simulated battle. She needed to run because of the student council president's idiotic rules, but he should read the letter quickly. After that, she jumped from the second floor, and he called out to her worriedly, and when a scream was heard from below, he covered his face with his hand and thought, why are there so many strange people in this world? Returning to the room, he opened the letter and thought, what is it? Another request for an escort? However, a summons is also quite possible. It is Ilya. She said it was a surprise, and when he saw the contents of this surprise, he was horrified. It was a request to accompany her to the ceremony. The final boss against the main character of the game. What could be worse? In the original, this was not the case, and the choice is very difficult. If he chooses Elnor, the main character will consider him an enemy, and if he chooses Ilya, the final boss will hate him. So, his death is not far off. An idea occurred to him. Maybe he should refuse both? He didn't know what to do. It was all about their increased interest in him. And then a brilliant idea came to him. He can accept both invitations at once. Soon the day arrived. The students gathered in a spacious hall for the celebration. Ilya, finding herself in the middle of the crowd, sighed heavily and noted how crowded it was. A real pig pen. After that, she smiled and thanked Dowd for going with her, to which he responded only with a restrained sigh. They mingled with the crowd, while the real MC sat by the fountain. It turns out that guy was just a walking clone of himself, which he bought in the system store. He spent all his points, but creating a double would help him a lot. The system informed him about the launch of a new event, a double date. He decided to accompany two ladies at once. It was simply amazing, but he couldn't be caught until the event ended. Failure would incur a penalty. With the help of the system, he could keep an eye on his double. He sent a cold gentleman to Ilya. He thought that, although the place would be crowded, there was still a risk. If he was spotted with the clone nearby, it would be the end of everything, so he chose a cold gentleman to keep them from opening their mouths. Suddenly, a loud scream from a monster was heard, and he even jumped in fright. A cage with an animal was brought into the hall, and Dowd, sighing with relief, thought that it was just some kind of monster. Maybe they would experiment on it, and then it would escape. This would trigger an event, and all he had to do was survive. He glanced at a product in the store called Pheromone, the scent of a true alpha male, and thought, it would work with the two of them, right? He accidentally pressed the use button, and at that moment, Elnor approached him. He greeted her nervously, and her nose twitched. Of course, she immediately smelled it, and asked if he was using perfume. He told her that the flowers here just smelled delicious, and she noted that it was definitely his smell. After that, she smiled and looked away shyly, saying that the smell was driving her crazy. He immediately began shaking off his clothes to get rid of the pheromone, after which the system said that the pheromone effect had been applied to Elnor. The target is trying hard to contain her attraction to him. Elnor sighed heavily and wondered with a smile why she hadn't noticed this before. He was much more masculine than he looked. These words horrified him, and to distract her a little, he suggested she go to the ceremony and try the local delicacies. She agreed, and he looked around, thinking that his clone and Ilya should have met by now. Now he needed to make sure they didn't cross paths. Elnor, meanwhile, was trying her best to calm down, and he hoped that nothing terrible would happen. Maybe if he continued in the same spirit, everything would be fine. He and the clone should just go for a walk with the ladies. He spotted some snacks and offered his companion a bite, to which she agreed with a smile. He offered her skewered meat, thinking that this was, of course, the worst offer for a girl watching her figure, but he had to somehow reduce the effect of the pheromone. But everything was just the opposite. She asked how he knew she liked it. Is this just a coincidence? He cursed silently and wondered if he should show her that he doesn't eat that kind of thing. She looked at him and asked with a smile, is it hard to stop eating that kind of meat? He remained silent and thought that he wanted to maintain a normal relationship with her, but at the same time, he needed to keep his distance. He also couldn't cross paths with Ilya. Elnor approached the souvenir shop and noticed that they even sold bracelets there. He didn't like any of it. He said that he didn't like anything, but he wanted to buy something for her. And then he wondered, why did he even say that? On the contrary, he needed to reduce her attraction to him. He decided to choose the worst possible gift option, a button. He showed it to her and asked if she liked it, but the pheromone effect was very strong. She said that she would need it for her uniform. It turned out to be very difficult for him to wean her off him. After that, they decided to have a snack. The pheromone effect seemed to have worn off a bit. She asked if he had already chosen a new major. He told her that he was thinking about applying to the Faculty of Theology, and she asked if maybe he would change his mind. With his talents, it was a pity not to apply to the Knights faculty. He told her that he would like to learn something in the theology faculty. That's why he chose it. She asked with interest what he wanted to study, to which he replied that in order to protect something precious to him, he needed to learn it, and perhaps it was only there. She asked what he wanted to protect, and he mentally answered her that it wouldn't hurt to protect his life from her appeal. Divine skills are ideal for his survival, and for the ending he wants, they are key. An incident with a secret society is coming, and the boss of this chapter is quite weak against divine skills. He told her that since childhood there was something he wanted to protect, and she asked if this had anything to do with his attraction to her. She knows very well about the curse of the Tristan family. She talks about the very curse that drives her family members crazy. But isn't mental training the only way to prevent this? Her face darkened, and she asked, or maybe he knew another way? He answered her that you can use an angel's blessing. They say that once 2 archangels bestowed their blessing on a person, it is a real miracle. Elnor already knew about this method and said that it is difficult. Therefore, despite all of Tristan's achievements, they still live in fear. But why does he still stay by her side? Why is he always there where attempts are made on her life? What are his intentions? He paused briefly, choosing his words, and confessed to her that what he wants to protect is her. She frowned and asked who she was to him, that he should protect her? He answered her that if he does not come to her aid, he will die. She remained silent, doubting it, and he said it was true and had no other reasons. She remarked that she had known it from the start, but he was such a strange guy. He told her that he often heard that, and then sighed heavily, knowing that he had honestly confessed everything. He hoped that would be enough to satisfy her curiosity. Meanwhile, Ilya and his clone had gone into a secluded place, a dark basement filled with cages containing monsters. Since Dowd had barely spoken to her, she assumed he was upset with her and decided to defuse the situation by saying that they had somehow miraculously ended up in that basement. She glanced at him and thought that she needed to get closer to him to learn more about Tristan's family, but she didn't even know how to approach this guy. This applies to any guy though, and it irritated her. She finally decided to pay attention to the place they had wandered into and noticed a bunch of monsters around. She said that it seemed like they were being used for experiments at the academy, but the local professors were irresponsible. They just leave all this horror in the basement. She passed the cage with the beast and turned around, noticing that there were some pretty large specimens here. She returned to the cage and took a closer look at the beast, wondering if they weren't even shackled. Suddenly, a light blinked next to it. It turned out that an explosive device was attached to the iron bars, but the girl noticed it too late. There was an explosion. Dowd immediately grabbed her and jumped aside with her, and at that very moment, all the students in the ceremony hall heard a roar and the building shook. The Dowd clone took the full impact. The fire scorched his back, but he still continued to loom over the girl, protecting her. She asked him in surprise why he did this, to which he replied that it was his mission. After that, he lost his strength and fell, and she got up and stared at him in confusion. She wanted to ask him about this mission, but now was not the time. The monsters were free. They bared their teeth, getting ready to attack the girl, and she, picking up an iron pipe from the floor, thanked Dowd for helping her. Now it was her turn to protect him. Meanwhile, the system informed the real Dowd about a new task. Here are the monsters. He needed to deal with them. If too many people died, he would receive a penalty for the scenario. As a reward, he would receive an exclusive equipment material. He rushed to the basement, telling Elnor that he needed to do something. Let her find the priest in the meantime. She confusedly told him to wait, and he asked her to do it. They needed to protect the students. When he ran into the basement, the first thing he did was call back the clone and call out to Ilya, anxiously asking, "Were those all the monsters?" Ilya, who had already dealt with most of the monsters, said it was good that he had woken up. The system notified him that her curiosity about him had grown into interest. The main scenario had changed. She said that she had missed one particularly large monster, and he nervously thought that it must be that bear. She continued, saying that it must be somewhere on the first floor. They needed to stop it quickly. But first, she needed to rest a little. Noticing how pale her face was, he asked if she was okay, thinking that the main scenario was now the priority. If he screwed up, the penalty would be unbearable. He absolutely could not allow that. Meanwhile, the bear reached the ceremonial hall, and the students were horrified at the sight of it. The man placed a barrier in front of them and exclaimed that they needed to hold out until the knights and teachers arrived, so they should maintain the barrier with all their might. The bear growled menacingly and began slapping its paws against the barrier, causing holes to appear in it. Meanwhile, Elnor brought in a priest and exclaimed that neither the rector nor Professor Conrad were here right now, and he said that they couldn't use an angel's blessing even in this situation. She asked indignantly, "And he calls himself a priest? There are students there after all." He remarked that it was rude to the professor. A high-ranking barrier like an angel's blessing is not available to everyone. He sighed and said that the knights would be here in a minute. They would wait for them. That's why he tried to stop their experiments on monsters. The Tristan family couldn't be given that right. Elnor gritted her teeth in irritation at his words, and then Dowd suddenly rushed past them and snatched the rosary from the priest's hands, saying that he would borrow it for a while. He indignantly ordered him to return it immediately, but he didn't listen and headed toward the bear, who was currently destroying the barrier. The professor exclaimed in anger that he was just an ordinary student. Did he even know how an angel's blessing worked? Dowd, meanwhile, combined the divine ultima with the priest's rosary, and the skills, asceticism, and sacred barrier became available to him. As he approached the monster, the system detected a threat posing a threat to his life. Desperate survival activated at EX rank. He abruptly dropped to the floor, sliding on the carpet between the monster's legs, and the man in charge of the barrier worriedly exclaimed, "Why isn't he running away?" He replied that he was trying to buy them time. Let him lead the students away for now. At that moment, the monster swung its paw and used the asceticism skill, converting all additional stats into constitution, after which he created a sacred barrier in front of himself, protecting him from the monster's blow. The force of the blow caused him to stagger, but he managed to stay on his feet. Meanwhile, everyone else was shocked. It was an angel's blessing. The bear continued to attack, trying to break through the barrier, but Dowd stood firm, and the floor behind him was already cracked from the blows. While everyone wondered how an ordinary student could have an angel's blessing, Elnor watched him in amazement, and the priest clutched his head and exclaimed that he was an idiot. Did he even know that even a high-ranking priest needs to pray endlessly to use it? Elnor, meanwhile, thought that it had finally happened. She was no longer surprised by anything. She had seen him hide his true potential more than once. The priest exclaimed, "Why can't this stupid monster break through his barrier?" He was about to curse, but suddenly someone hit him on the back of the head, causing him to lose consciousness. Ilya asked if he was really a professor. He was no use. Elnor turned to her and she apologized for knocking him out. That idiot was completely useless. The girl asked what was taking her so long, and she warily replied that she had passed out in the basement and had just come to her senses. She caught her breath and glanced at Dowd, noticing that he was able to use the blessing at such a level, and he wasn't even a priest. They say you need decades of training to achieve such an effect. How is that possible? Elnor thought. So it takes decades of practice to produce such energy. She remembered that he told her he wanted to study at the theological faculty. He would die if he didn't protect her. He had no other reason. And then her heart began to beat faster. Ilya said that even if it was an accumulated blessing, there must be a limit to the potential he could control. Lucky her. Elnor didn't understand what she was talking about, and she said that it was obvious he was doing all this for her and Tristan's family. Elnor looked at the boy who was now struggling to restrain the monster, and when Ilya said that he had no reason to take such a risk, she thought she had known it all along. All this time, she felt as if she had been in pitch darkness, and then a glimmer of light appeared, and now, looking at it, her heart was pounding so fast it could burst out of her chest. She abruptly pulled out her sword and thought how strange it was. Then she rushed into the attack, to the surprised looks of everyone present, and jumped up, towering over the monster. She raised the blade above her head and then swung it at the beast. There was a roar. The huge beast was pinned to the floor, and Dowd looked at the girl in surprise. When the pressure was released, the bear rose up on trembling paws and roared loudly. Seeing Elnor's movements, Dowd immediately realized it was Tristan's true sword technique. She lunged several times, delivering swift stabbing blows to her opponent, and didn't stop until blood spurted from its mouth. After that, she changed her stance, approached the monster from the side, and swung her sword in a semicircle, her tramontana technique. The enormous beast was thrown back several meters, then there was a roar and an explosion. Dowd was surprised to think that this technique was on a completely different level from the one he copied. But is this normal? In the original, Elnor didn't interfere. The system notified him of an incredible achievement. He had slain the monster without a single casualty. There were 30 seconds left before the knights arrived. He thought that all the professors who insisted on continuing experiments on living monsters were Tristan's supporters. If Elnor intervenes personally, she's essentially admitting her family's guilt. Generally, she avoids political squabbles. So why did she decide to intervene now? He was lost and simply wanted to get it over with and think about the rest later. Meanwhile, Ilya escorted the students to the exit, and they were safe. Since the fight was over, Elnor sheathed her sword and declared it over. But it was still too early. Dowd suddenly warned her of danger from behind. A half-burnt bear leaped out of the blazing fire. The girl turned around immediately. She wouldn't have time to react, so Dowd used the sacred barrier again. The terrifying monster pounced on him and struck. But unfortunately, this time, Dowd couldn't take it and fell unconscious. When he came to his senses, he was confused, because a second ago he'd been fighting the monster and protecting Elnor, and now he was lying on the bed. Adelante, noticing his confusion, said that the monster had been defeated, and Elnor was also fine. He was surprised. The principal herself was sitting in front of him. She looked up at him with a smile, and added that, of course, the other students were also unharmed. Was he surprised by her visit? She hadn't had a chance to talk to him since the incident with the newcomer's duel. He nervously told her that he didn't mind her visit, and thought that she was Adelante's swan song, an immortal who had lived for 1,000 years. Why would she want to meet him? It wasn't because of the angelic blessing he had used, was it? She said that she was here to tell him not the most pleasant news, and even bad. She closed her eyes and asked where she should begin. He asked her to start with the bad news, and she approached him, saying that he had attracted more attention than any student had ever experienced. They didn't have any students who had been involved in so many incidents. Judging by her experience, with his bad luck, he'll continue to get into trouble and accidents. Dowd thought he wasn't doing this on purpose. But what could he do? Now it was time for another piece of news. Adelante asked how much he knew about demons. Interesting reaction, Dowd. Doesn't he care at all about the topic brought up by the academy's rector? He sat up in bed and said he didn't think he had to reveal how much he really knew. And even if he did, he didn't know what she was planning. She came closer and asked, "What does he mean?" He said he was the only one who still hadn't been assigned a class. He couldn't even attend classes. She said, clearly, he wasn't happy with this situation. Then she snapped her fingers and added that she had to deal with the aftermath of all these incidents. She didn't know if he was aware that the current hegemony doesn't have much control over society. The moment wasn't right for them. They would do anything to attract talent, even if it meant digging it out of the ground. He said, the coup d'etat of the tribal associations, the changes taking place on the part of the Holy Empire organization, and the heir to the throne, it's all because of them, right? The reason for everything that's happening. She looked at him in surprise and thought, wow. She said, he's right. For now, the Golden Triangle is posing as good neighbors, but behind the outward grace lies a fierce struggle for talent. Most students aren't even interested in this. He said, that's right. Because of this, the entire continent is feeling the consequences. All the events he was involved in will attract their attention, but despite this, they haven't done anything yet. That's strange, unless someone has deliberately restricted the flow of information. She folded her arms and thought, so he has political savvy too. He said, does that mean if he attracts their attention, it will be dangerous? She answered, right, the world will be destroyed. The next second, she showed him terrifying things and holding out a symbol, asked, does he know everything about this seal? That's why she asked about demons, he thought. The Eraser seal? She wondered if he knew about that too. The Eraser organization is a secret organization of demon worshippers, an organization whose ultimate goal is to bring demons into this world. She said, and the incident with the attempted assassination of Elnor, the case of the escaped monster, were most likely their doing. Both incidents are aimed at Tristan's family, and there is no guarantee that a third will not happen. The protagonist asked why she is telling him all this. She replied that although she cannot answer that question, she asks that he simply accept it. She handed him the interdimensional key. MC took it in his hand and thought, an imbalance item that can open doors to other worlds. She said, looking at his face, is it obvious that he knows what this thing is? He must take care of it and show her his progress. If she likes what he shows, she will give him more gifts. Then she snapped her fingers and returned him to bed. She told him to keep this conversation a secret. He replied, okay. Then she went to the teapot and poured the contents into a mug and added, how are he doing with Lady Elnor and the hero candidate? He wondered, did she really need to ask? He said, everything is fine. She approached him and said that she hoped it would stay this way. He asked, why? Is there a reason to stick to this? She smiled and answered, yeah, if he screws up, the world will end. She showed him the horrific event again, and he grabbed his head and screamed. Again, he thought, why is this world so fragile? She laughed and said that she was not lying. She thought, of course, the goal of their plan can only be achieved with the three of them. Sometime later, the protagonist stood in the corridor. He looked at the key in his hands and said, the end of the world. He would think about it later. Who would have known that she would arrange such a setup for him? An ordinary player would never get this item. It seemed like no one cared about the script. Then Conrad came up to him and said, "Here he is." He noticed him, and the professor said he was looking for him. Dowd. He asked, was he looking for him? Why? He replied, even if he hadn't been assigned a class yet, he couldn't allow him to skip classes. Then he handed him a letter and said it was his temporary assignment. The protagonist looked at the letter, and the professor added that starting tomorrow, he would be teaching these guys. He asked in surprise. It said, Student Council President Elnor, Vice President Ilya. He shouted. Now it really smelled like the end of the world. After a while, the professor said, so the sword can be considered a universal weapon for any situation. Then he waved the chalk on the board and asked, but what about the situation with obstacles? At that moment Elnor said, Professor, she has a question. He asked, who? Ah, she should speak, Lady Elnor. She asked, doesn't he think he's getting too carried away with theory? She doesn't think all this information will be useful in a real fight. He looked at her with surprise and asked, excuse me? She said that in a real fight, even an experienced knight can lose against a ranged weapon. The professor turned to the students and said that was true. She added, unless of course, he hadn't trained something to the point of exhaustion. Then he would definitely need shooting and throwing training to complement his skills. Ilya added, interestingly, she thought the professor was right. Elnor said that by using the environment, a swordsman would have an easier time dodging arrows or stones, and if the enemy got close, he would definitely not be left without a weapon. Ilya asked, what if the advantage of distance couldn't be compensated for by cover? Isn't that why they attend lectures on close combat? She said she was sure she should understand the difference between theory and real combat. Ilya replied that the professor should teach the lecture. Even if she was being forced to be here, why couldn't she just sit silently? She asked, forced? Then she indignantly said, as student council president, it was her responsibility to ensure the quality of education received by the students for whom she was responsible. Ilya frowned and shouted, then she certainly shouldn't disturb the professor. Why was she always interfering? At that point, MC asked if they could continue the lesson. But Elnor told her not to say that she believed all this theoretical nonsense was useful in real life. Ilya replied that at least it sounded more useful than she had said. She was absolutely certain of that. She said she couldn't believe the hero candidate couldn't understand the difference between advice and insults. At that moment, the protagonist repeated, can they continue? Then Ilya leaned toward him and joyfully said, that's it. Victory is hers. She knew Dowd would support her. Elnor adjusted a strand of hair and sighing said, that's just one defeat. He can continue, Professor. He replied that he understood. Right. He suggests moving on to the actual preparations. At that moment, the protagonist thought, it's always like that. Because of these idiots, the other students constantly stare at them. And since he was sitting right between a hero candidate and the heiress of a noble family, well, never mind, he'll focus on his task. Then he looked at the system window, which said, Elnor. Trust level 5, likability level 1, reward available for claim. He thought, wow, that's cool. The next system window said, Tristan House Fencing Technique, Basic, Efficiency, 58%. A fencing technique of the famous ducal house of Tristan. The user can effectively use this technique with any weapon. Breathing technique, Deep, Basic. A breathing technique that significantly increases physical endurance and stamina. This skill synergizes well with the Tristan family's fencing technique. MC considered how well these two skills work together. Combined with the physical buff, it's an incredibly effective combination. The only person capable of fully exploiting this combo's potential is Elnor. Her fearsome melee skills are the reason she became the final boss. Besides that, he looked at the next system window. It said, Ilya. Curiosity level 5, interest level 1, reward available. Evil rule E. He must expand his influence to positive characters he's bonded with. The attracted characters will fulfill one of his requests. He must keep friends close, enemies even closer. Increasing affection with positive characters brings valuable rewards. If he manages to lure a canonically positive character to the evil side, the reward will be even greater. He looked at this and thought, what does that mean? He can loot rewards for turning good people bad? After a while, Conrad said, welcome kids. Survival 101. They'll be practicing practical survival skills. If they don't want to die in dungeons or ruins, the skills they've learned here will be essential. He folded his arms and added that today's task is simple. They need to go into the forest and bring back something they think he might like. They have 10 minutes. The protagonist asked if there would be any grades. He replied that he had already said so. He would be judging. More precisely, he and the student council president, they must try their best. One of the students said, this assignment is too vague, Professor. He shouted, life is about experience, kids. They start in 5 minutes. At that moment, the MC sat down on a rock and looked at the system window. He thought, keep friends close, enemies even closer. How can he accomplish this? How can you even make a good character bad? At that moment, Ilya approached him and asked, Dowd, doesn't he want to work together? He looked at her and said that she would be better off working with her friends. She smiled and said, but he's her friend too. He frowned, looking at her, and thought that she should stomp off to her party. She asked why they don't work together. The protagonist thought, no way, that would be highly inappropriate, no matter how you look at it. Then she awkwardly folded her fingers and asked, what's wrong? Does he feel out of place? He replied, no, they're just not that close. She looked at him in surprise, then looked away and turning around said, that's insulting. Oh well, Trisha, watching this said, Ilya. The protagonist looked at her and thought, was that too rude? She looked annoyed. Then Talion Armand approached him and called him. The protagonist looked up at him. He thoughtfully asked what his connection was with the hero candidate. The protagonist thought, Talion? He's the coolest in their class after Ilya. However, in the first chapter, he'll be an intermediate boss. What's wrong with him? Then he replied that they simply happened to talk. He said, with such a skilled warrior like Ilya, there's no point in talking to him. A system window appeared in front of him, stating Evil Rule E. The positive character was annoyed by his interference. He looked at him with anger and said, that 1-minute duel between them has caused a lot of conflicting rumors. Why does he continue to harass them? MC thought, oh, the status has updated. He inadvertently fulfilled the conditions of the temperament that makes him angry. Talion frowned and, baring his teeth, said, he has to be honest? Was that a fake victory? He wondered if, since he would be the intermediate boss anyway, he could use him to apply the evil rule. He added that he couldn't hide the truth from him. The protagonist looked at him and said, it wasn't a fake. Maybe he just wanted it to be that way? He smiled and offered to knock him out in one hit so he could feel the difference between them. He, still angry, asked, is he willing to bet? Then he put his hand to his chest and added, the bet is who will get the highest score on this assignment. How about him? The protagonist smiled and thought, yeah, great. After a while, Conrad approached Elnor and said, hey, student council president. He assigned her to help with the grading. Wasn't she being too relaxed? She replied that she was as serious as always. He asked, really? Then she should explain to him this. How come Dowd always gets the highest score, even though he didn't even properly complete the placement? She replied that he deserved everything. He asked, what was she talking about? She folded her arms across her chest and said, it seems he's unhappy with her grading system. He told her to put herself in his shoes. She asked if she just observed him enough to judge whether he deserved the highest score. Then she turned around and said that she would be right back. But he put his hand on her shoulder and told her to wait. Was she deliberately trying to stay close to him? She replied that, of course, that wasn't true. She simply didn't want to leave him alone with the heroine. There was a high probability that something was going on between them that shouldn't be happening. He should let her keep an eye on him. He said, hey, he let her participate, so he might as well kick her out. How did she like that? After a while, Trisha thought Ilya clearly wasn't in the mood today. At that moment, she attacked the monster, screaming loudly. Lucas said in surprise, there are so many powerful monsters here. Is there really something important to them nearby? Philip said, spot on. There are rare mineral deposits here. They'll get a couple of gems, no need to worry about their grades. Palkas adjusted his monocle and said, okay, time to end the hunt. They'll help Luca get the minerals. Then they heard a voice asking for help. At that moment, energy lit up Ilya's chest. She clenched her teeth and fought the monsters while the others watched in surprise. Trisha thought, this is the color of negative emotions. Obviously, she's furious, even though she's trying not to show it. Then she came up to her and asked, hey, Ilya, has everything been okay with her lately? She turned around in surprise and asked, huh, lately? Nothing out of the ordinary. She said, still. If anything's bothering her, she's willing to help. She asked back, what's the matter? Nothing happened. Trisha thought, even though she says it, she's afraid her emotions might get the better of her. Then she said, but she can see that something's bothering her. Then Ilya crouched down by the tree and asked, so noticeable, right? You can't fool her, Trisha. She said, Dowd. He continues to keep his distance. She just wants to be friends with him. She replied, yeah, they've been through a lot, so there's no need to shut her out. She asked, maybe that's not what he's after. She looked at her and asked, what did she mean? She replied, he's just a young man from a minor baron's family. If they were seen together too often, people might start to doubt her. Ilya asked, is he trying to help her? She replied, that's right. Perhaps he just wants to avoid unnecessary rumors. Maybe he's even trying to boost her reputation to be a worthy friend. Ilya thought for a moment and asked, really? At that moment, the protagonist ran forward, and the system reported that Talion's anger had reached its limit. He'd shamed him enough. His negative influence was growing. The conditions for activating the rule had been met, and the reward had been received. At that moment, Talion ran after him, shouting, idiot, he'll grind him to dust. He launched several attacks with his spear, and the protagonist continued to run, trying to dodge. He shouted, stop running. He needs to fight like a man. He was deliberately dodging attacks he was putting all his strength into. Then the protagonist turned around and extended his hand, telling him to wait. He stopped and asked, Talion, listen. He doesn't want to split the reward in half, he shouted in irritation. Idiot. The protagonist abruptly ran in the opposite direction, exploding a tree behind him, and Talion concentrated energy in his body and swinging his spear shouted, thousands of lightning. The weapon flew forward, but the tip of the weapon was split in half by a sword strike. Ilya delivered a powerful attack and said, hands off her friend. Talion was surprised. Ilya, he thought, a hero candidate. Then he said that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. It seemed this was their first meeting since escaping from the monsters. She abruptly approached him and, stopping the weapon at his neck, said he was mistaken. This was their first meeting since he died for her. The protagonist wondered in surprise. Where did she come from? Then Talion laughed awkwardly and said that he was also glad to see her. She asked what he was going to do with Dowd. He asked, what Dowd? She told him not to say that he decided to mock him. He replied, no, he was only... Before he could finish, she knocked him down and, pointing the sword at him, said that she did not need his excuses. He shouted that he understood. He understood. But why was she even protecting him? He was as strong as she was. She put her foot on his chest and and said that her connections were none of his business. The protagonist awkwardly called out to her, and she said that she hated people who think they are better than others and take out their dissatisfaction on them. Talion shouted, but he was lying to their faces. She said that's how he teaches them. The protagonist thought, what? She said that he didn't do anything wrong. He's not that kind of person. He wants to be knocked out with one blow again? He shouted. What? He thought. Was that the real him? He could have died that time. After that, he knelt down and bowed his head and said that he asks for forgiveness, Dowd. He will not approach him without permission again. After that, Ilya put the sword in its sheath and said that they should live in harmony. She passed by MC and he thought, as expected of her. She is great at guiding characters on the right path. I wonder if they still count as friends? Right now, he thinks they still count for now. Wait, honestly, it doesn't really matter. He needs to quickly finish the grades for the distribution. After some time, Trisha looked at him in surprise and asked, they have met before, right? She is Trisha. He looked at her and said, right, Ilya's friend, he remembers. She said she wanted to ask something. He sighed and wondered whether she always launched into long, tedious speeches, whether in the original or now. She looked away and said he might not like it very much, but Ilya, huh? She was surprised to see the MC turn around and walk away. He waved his hand and said he was going to get his grade first. She replied, okay. She frowned as she watched him go, thinking he'd caused a rift between her and Talion. In most cases, she'd rather solve a problem with a conversation than a sword. And the problem was him, Dowd. Then the protagonist stopped in surprise and shouted, what the hell is that? The dean was sitting on the cracked ground and said, the crazy student council president. She was lying on the ground nearby, and he said she kept wanting to go into the forest, so he had to give her an ultimatum. Over his dead body. He won, as far as he could see. The protagonist thought, this academy is just a bunch of crazy people. Then the dean said, but this kid's gotten better than before. Hey, did she put down roots there? The MC thought he should just give her a detention and be done with it. Then he smiled and said he came for his grades. He replied, exactly, they were in class. He should take a look. Wow, why so many? He replied, nothing. It took some effort to get all the best. Conrad looked at the contents of the bag and said, incredible. First place is his. He's sure Percy will be thrilled with this. Then he put his hand to his face and added, he already has one wish from her. Why not curry favor? He replied, okay, he'll try. Then Trisha came up to them and asked if they were finished. The dean replied, yes, he could go. Trisha, she should help her. She replied, okay, and then said, Dowd, he should take care of Ilya, but try not to be too nice to her. Every time the conversation turns to him, she gets carried away. She's worried that this will complicate her future. He looked at her in surprise and thought he was grateful, but as if he could influence that. Then he walked forward and throwing the bag over his shoulder, said, well, all right, she shouldn't worry. He'll try. She thought he should try if he wanted to pull through. Then she concentrated the energy in her hand and directed it at Elnor. She thought Ilya didn't know yet, but she could see she was about to cross that line. Sometime later, the Faculty of Magic. Percy held a cup in her hand, crossed her legs and asked, so he came to ask for his wish? Already? The protagonist stood in front of her and said, yes, he needed something from her, the goddess of magic. She said he didn't have to suck up. She wasn't planning on doing anything supernatural anyway. He said, alone, maybe. But she interrupted him and said that no one here would lift a finger until he voiced his wish. He thought that to pass the upcoming episode with the Erasure boss, he needed to prepare thoroughly. Then she said, well, the record still told her to help him in any way she could, as long as it wasn't a wish with bad intentions, of course. So what did he want? He looked at the system window, which said the reward for Ilya had been received. He received 500 points and 1 seed of evil. He can exchange these special skills for points in the shop. The list of skills available for purchase has been updated. Ilya, negative seal, 1 stack, rule of evil can be used once. Talion, negative seal, 1 stack, can use rule of evil once. He thought the effects of special skills are much more powerful than any items. This should be enough, but he still needs a lot of preparation. Dowd itself is too weak to cope with another form of eraser. That's why he needs this. Then the protagonist cleared his throat and said he needed a gun. A gun that could blow the entire academy to hell. Percy asked if he was sick. She stood up from her seat and said, requesting her to make it is one thing, but how was he going to use it? He raised his hand and told her to wait. Then he showed her the document and said it clearly stated that she would honor any feasible request. And his request for the Dean of the Faculty of Magic himself was a mere trifle. She frowned, looked at the document and said, but creating a weapon is far from trivial. He asked, a promise is a promise, isn't it? He doesn't intend to harm anyone here. He simply wants to destroy one creature before it becomes too annoying. She shouted, that doesn't calm me down one bit, you idiot. Okay, she was sure he had his reasons. And since he was helping with the monsters, so be it. She would make him a gun. He thanked her in return, and she said she couldn't believe the rector not only turned a blind eye to him and his harem, but considered him the savior of the world, no less. The protagonist asked, harem. She grabbed her head and screamed, stop. What's wrong with her? She completely lost herself in her own thoughts. It was all his fault, Dowd. He told her to calm down, please. By the way, he'd been promised something more than just his wish. She asked, really? There was something else? He folded his arms and said that he and Ilya had each been promised 1 item from the vision vault. This promise, could she fulfill it right now? After a while, he thought, Great, the canon order has been placed. All that remained was to get the materials to create it. Everything needed could easily be obtained with the interdimensional key. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. Then Galder Riverback came out to meet him and said, "Hey kid, is it him, Dowd?" He said yes, that's right. He smiled and said that he didn't expect to meet him here. What a coincidence. He is Galder, the head of the charity foundation, the House of Erasers. The protagonist thought, how ridiculous. This is just a money laundering scheme. Galder, the boss of the head, the Eraser, the leader of the Furious Fire. Galder handed him a card and said that he had heard a lot of rumors about him. He even showed courage, single-handedly stopped an escaped monster. Not everyone can do that. It takes both skill and courage. Impressive. The protagonist took the card and asked, is that so? He said that when he sees such incredible students, he always looks forward to their future achievements. He wants to invite him to dinner. Is he free now? There is something that he would like to discuss. The MC said that he thinks that they can discuss something here and now. He thought, it's just like in the original. Only this guy was pestering Ilya in the script. Why did he approach him? Did the system really make him the main character? No, that couldn't be right. He scratched his head and thought, no way. Then he said he'd think about it. Galder turned around and said they'd see each other in 3 days at Twilight Eyes. He'd be waiting. The main character walked in the opposite direction and thought, hey, he said he'd just think about it. Damn it. Twilight Eyes is a high-class restaurant right across from the academy. He looked at the card and said, my eyes hurt. Oh well, he'll go. He'll go. He shielded himself from the bright light and thought, frankly, he couldn't have avoided the main event anyway. As always, there are only yes and no. What he can do, what he knows, what he doesn't know, including factors and risks. Considering all the current situations, defeating the Erasers is entirely possible. Although he still doesn't understand why he has to play the role assigned to Ilya. Maybe everything was mixed up from the start. Okay, he'll deal with the problems as they arise, and he'll think about the rest later. Then he nervously knocked on the door and asked, Elnor, is she there? She sat up in bed and going to the door asked, Dowd, what is he doing here? He said she didn't have to come out. He just wanted to ask something. She told him to ask. He cleared his throat and said, will she by any chance be free in 3 days? She said, in 3 days. Beatrix was standing in the room with her and said, you have to return the books on time, President. She hadn't even read them. They're just lying around unused. She didn't take them because of the cover, did she? Why should she have to pay for the late payment because of that? Elnor put her finger to her lips. MC said, yes, President. That day, he would like to go somewhere with her, if she didn't mind. She asked, go? Just the 2 of them? He confirmed it. She asked, where? He said, a place called Twilight Eyes. Did she know it? Beatrix shouted, that's the place known as the best for dates. She said that she knew. But why was he asking her to go with him? He replied that he would tell her if she agreed. They stood with one door between them. She asked, was he trying to bargain? In the past, Cullivan called Ilya and then said, there she is. She cried and told him not to talk to her. He said, hey. He said he was sorry. He won't bother her anymore. She turned around and, frowning, said that he was a liar. What's funny about pushing her down a hill? He looked away and, scratching the back of his head, said that he just wanted to kick her. She was indignant. Why was he torturing his sister? He laughed slightly and said, it was a joke. Then he handed her the bag and said that he was just teaching her to be strong, silly. He doesn't want anyone to bully his sister. She screamed that she didn't need such care. He answered, but she should take the cookies he brought from the Baron. She took the bag and asked, he stole these, right? He asked, what do you mean? Stole them? He just took the leftovers. Then he sat down next to her and said that, thanks to the Baron, he could soon be appointed a knight's apprentice. She took a bite of her cookie and asked what would happen next. He replied that he would go to a real battlefield. He would experience something new, see the world. Who knows? Maybe they would even give him the title of guardian. She told him to dream. Anyone who bullies his little sister doesn't deserve to be a guardian. He asked how she should know that. Was there a rule that forces him to sit still his whole life? She said that if he ends up on the battlefield, he might die. He answered that if he's unlucky, yes, but he's quite skilled. He doesn't think that will happen. She sighed and said that she really hoped he would die, that he should leave her alone. He's always bothering her, bullying her, and he doesn't listen to his mom and dad. He keeps swinging his sword. Death is already waiting for him there, Sir Calivan. He looked at her and said that if he became a guardian, he would always protect her. The next second, Ilya woke up, hearing her name being called. She looked out the door and asked, what's wrong? The protagonist was standing there. He looked away, scratched the back of his head and said that he was sorry. He handed her a bag and said that he was from the provinces, so he wasn't quite used to the way things worked here. So he apologized for saying that they weren't friends. He got her some cookies from the kitchen. They were delicious. She looked at the bag in his hands and asked, why is he apologizing? This is not cool. They are friends. She turned around and said that he could go to bed peacefully. He told her to wait, friend. He needed her help. Can she go somewhere with him? It's urgent. She looked at him in surprise and thought, is he completely crazy? After a while, Elnor was filling out a document, and Beatrix said, well, they'd done all they could with the course materials. She'd also checked the accounts of each club. All that remained was to deal with the transfer students. One of the tribal associations had just been transferred to them. She seems to be from the sect that fell during the coup d'etat. She's the chieftain's daughter, apparently. Essentially, she's in exile. A whole group of assistants will be arriving with her. She thinks that in reality, she and her family are simply seeking refuge here. Her name is Lilu Garuda. Had she heard of her? She seems quite famous. Elnor put her finger to her head and said, perhaps. The secretary said that the holiest of the Holy Empire would be arriving next semester. Elnor asked, in person? She took off her glasses and said that they said there would be representatives, but apparently, the rector could have pulled some strings to arrange everything. Elnor turned her chair and said, Saint and daughter of the tribal chieftain. Then she put the pen down on the notes and, closing her eyes, said, something's brewing at the academy, she's sure of it. Beatrix said, this place is always like this, President. She sighed and said that she had forgotten. She asked what she had been preoccupied with all day. It wasn't her first day on duty, was it? Elnor lowered her gaze and said, I'm just not in the mood. Meanwhile, MC said, who would have known there was an observation deck here? The night sky is so beautiful. Ilya lay next to him and asked, Dowd, do they really need to do this now? He said there was no other option. This is the only way for this to work perfectly. Okay, she should wait a second, he thought. With the catapult he'd received from the vision vault, they could get there. Although this area was only accessible to high-ranking players, he had a secret map given to him by the rector. Ilya asked what he was planning in the middle of the night, then he pressed the button and shouted, let's go. They flew into the air. He shouted, Ilya. She must concentrate and keep her eyes open. They flew towards the portal, and the protagonist shouted that this was a portal between dimensions. They will arrive soon. She mustn't be afraid, Ilya. She remembered her brother's smile. And then he asked why she kept crying. What was she afraid of? She just had to look at him, Ilya. In the present, the protagonist shouted that this could be a little dangerous. The next second, the portal closed behind them. The protagonist said, hey, they don't have much time, okay? Anyway, this is an interdimensional reality. She should try not to touch anything. It could be dangerous. They continued to fly further, and Ilya stopped on a flying stone and shouted, what is he doing? He told her not to be afraid. The gravity is unstable here, and they needed to go a little higher. She asked what he was doing here. He smiled, looking at her, and said she would find out soon. She had to jump. The rocks were flying backwards. She screamed. Was he crazy? They would die if they fell. He replied that they wouldn't die. She just had to jump. The next second, she jumped off the rock and screamed in surprise. Was she falling? She stretched out her hand, and memories of Caliban shouting, Ilya! She answered, she's here, little brother. He shouted that it was dangerous to stay here. She had to run to the back door, then to the stable. She was shaking all over and asked in fear, were they going to abandon Mom and Dad? He shouted that she had to run. He would take care of them. He held his sword in front of him and shouted that if she ran into the descendants of the apocalypse, she should just hide. She grabbed his cloak and asked what happened to him. Tears were streaming down her eyes. She was saying, Mom and Dad are dead. She's not stupid. Mom and Dad are dead. They're the only ones left. And if he dies too, what will she do? That's why they have to stick together. He closed his eyes, stopping the tears, and said, silly. If he goes with her, they'll both be in danger. Even though he's her brother, he is also a guardian. She shouldn't think or worry about anything. She just has to run as far as she can. That way she'll be safe. They'll meet on that hill where he often trained. She has to answer Ilya. She said desperately. Okay, he added. Okay, she shouldn't worry. Everything will be fine. Now she has to run, sister. He's right behind her. In the present, MC grabbed her hand. She screamed. Where's his gravity, huh? He smiled and asked, but she's falling really slowly, isn't she? She looked at him and screamed, you should have been more specific. She almost died. He answered calmly, Ilya, she'll get used to it soon. She should look up. He'd found their target. Then he helped her climb the rock, and they noticed Gregory's ghost, and the protagonist, grabbing the bag, shouted, okay, she has to hold on. Ilya asked, what is this? What should she do with this thing? He caught the ghost and, tying the bag, said that she'd have to run a little more with this bag. She asked, what run? He threw the bag over his shoulder, turned around and asked, can't she see? He pushed off the rock sharply. She asked, isn't it just the sky? The next second, everything around darkened, and huge teeth appeared before them. The protagonist frowned and said, it's a monster from interdimensional reality, and now is the time to run. The huge creature was heading towards them, and he said, but we need to intercept whatever falls out of it. She screamed in surprise. What? Then she opened the bag and screamed, like that? This is too much. After that, they landed, and the protagonist, breathing heavily, thought about how he'd calculated it. It only works as long as the card's effect lasts. He asked, Ilya, is everything okay? Is she hurt? He took her hand, and she pushed it away and said, he shouldn't say that he'd planned all this from the start, even the escape. He smiled, looking at her, and said, well, yes, everything had gone according to plan. Early farming of Gregory's ghost was a pretty simple tactic for a game veteran like him. She rose to her feet and protested, but why didn't he immediately say that they were heading to an interdimensional reality? He was surprised, but he thought she wouldn't go. She tossed him the bag and told him to take it. She filled it well. She couldn't believe he'd woken her up for this. In response, he thanked her and apologized for not telling her. He was truly sorry. The system reported that Ilya's affection was rapidly growing. Interest level 4. He wondered in surprise, why? And she walked forward, smiling. He wondered why her affection level had increased. He didn't understand. After some time, Adelante, out of breath from training, began to tie up her hair and asked in surprise, is that what she thinks? MC replied that he had no idea what she was thinking, but it was a spiritual essence. She pulled her hair back into a ponytail and asked, "Ah, so this is loot from an interdimensional reality?" With these words, she looked at the bag, and he replied, "Exactly." Then he showed the card and asked, "Isn't that why she gave him this thing?" She replied that she didn't think he would use it so soon. "Better tell her. What happened to his hair?" He replied. Dean Percy struck him with lightning. He got her some ectoplasm from an interdimensional realm, and she, Adelante, folded her arms and asked, "He says a spiritual entity?" Percy was probably surprised. She might be a sorceress, but she was terrified as hell. He asked if she was happy. She just said that if he pleases her, he'll receive more gifts. She said, "The magic tower would hang itself for that. So why did he bring it to her?" He replied that he didn't need a reward so much as a request. Spiritual entities hold the consciousness of people who have achieved great things, and he wanted an item imbued with one of them. She closed her eyes and said that if he creates something like that, the consciousness will slowly begin to awaken and strengthen. What a far-sighted decision, Dowd. He thinks correctly. He said the item he wants. Before he could finish, she said, "First of all, he should let her ask, why is he doing all this?" She sighed and added, "He defeated an assassin without a weapon, knocked out a hero candidate with a single blow, and even slew monsters to set a record. Is he so desperate to become stronger? Why?" He replied that it was because of the demons that would soon appear in the story. The ending involved Ilya and Elnor, and he was now closely connected to both. He thought, as if he could say that, really. Then he added, he would have a question too. Why such favor towards him? She asked what he meant. He closed his eyes and said that he was sure she had many more questions for him. For example, how did he find the entrance to the interdimensional reality? How does he know about spiritual entities? How did he defeat Ilya? How did he stop the monsters? He knows so many things that ordinary students don't think about. But at the same time, strangely enough, he is still a newbie. Yet he feels like the academy has begun to revolve around him lately, which is to say, he knows that it sounds like an exaggeration, but he truly believes that everything, from his studies to a person's daily life, is controlled by her, the rector. How can he say this, as if he is being encouraged to do whatever he wants? What would she demand of him in exchange for her favor? She answered, speaking in that tone with the rector, she doesn't quite approve of this, student Dowd, and yet she sees that he understands everything perfectly well. Why is he being treated so special, he asks. Maybe it's because he's cute. He scratched his head and thought, God, he didn't say anything like that. Why her? Nevertheless, she agreed to give him an item imbued with spiritual essence. If he increases his synchronization level with such an item, the essence will awaken, and if he continues to cultivate it, it will greatly help in the second chapter. But before that, after some time, the system reported the main quest for Chapter 1, the Eraser. He must deal with the incident that will occur in Twilight Eyes, 0 days until the event. He walked through the crowd and thought about dealing with the current quest. Then Elnor said, "He has arrived, Dowd." He looked at her and said, "President?" He didn't keep her waiting for him. She adjusted her lipstick and replied that it wasn't so. She just arrived. "About 6 hours ago?" he said in surprise. She looked completely different than at the sorting ceremony. He thought, she arrived before sunset? Then she came up to him and, fixing her hair, said that it was her first time in such a place, so she decided to get ready in advance and take a seat. He thought this was too much. Did she know? And then she added, "This is also his first time going outside. A newbie?" He answered, "Probably. Yes, that's right." She asked why he was looking away. He thought because it was his first time going outside with a girl. Honestly, this is completely different from the ceremony. More like a date, right? The next second she took his hand and walked forward, said that they should go. The line is long. Then they stopped near the crowd. People in the line were shouting. They shouldn't push. Why isn't this line getting smaller? This is Twilight Eyes. It's always packed. The protagonist asked, will they even be able to get inside? Then Talion made a recording and shouted, "Number 27. He repeats for the last time. Number 27. Okay. Deleted. And number 28. They must pass. After that, the protagonist approached him and asked, Talion, what is he doing here? He smiled awkwardly and said, Mr. Dowd, does he remember him? His family doesn't sponsor him, so he works here part-time. Oh, and the student council president is here? At that moment, Elnor nodded, looking at him, and then Talion added, Mr. Dowd, may I? He wanted to ask, what kind of relationship are they in that they came here together? At that moment, a worker shouted, Can I have number 29? Then the MC looked at Elnor and asked, Relationship? He thought, right. Why is he even here with the student council president? Is this a date? Elnor said, Waiter, can she pass by as the student council president? He answered, Of course, yes. The protagonist said, He should wait. Talion, is he wearing a pendant? He looked surprised. Is he? Then he took it off and looking at the item said, Yes. This pendant was given to him by the founder of the Erasers. Does he know who it is? Marquise Riverback also leads them. The system reported that the power of the evil rule skill was beginning to manifest over Talion's target. MC pointed at him and asked if he could not wear it today. He looked surprised. What? He added. He should ask the other workers to take it off. Talion frowned, looked at him, and replied, Okay, Mr. Dowd. The protagonist thought the plot had changed slightly after Ilya and Elnor's affection levels had increased, which meant he should try to influence Marquise Riverback's affection for him as well. The chances of him simply grabbing a bite and leaving were minimal. The story would change here anyway. Then they went inside, and Galder stood before them and said, Lady Elnor, what an honor, and Student Dowd. The protagonist thought, so he needs to prepare countermeasures. The system reported the main task, The villain is trying to win him over. He must act wisely. Galder said, Princess, will he steal student Dowd from her for a while? They need to discuss something. She walked forward in surprise and said, Hey, who gave the go-ahead? The protagonist extended his hand and said, It's all right, President. Galder said, Princess, they'll take her to a private room. She looked at him in surprise, then looked away. Galder added, It won't take long. Oh, it seems their princess values student Dowd? Well, they should go. After a while, Galder took a glass of drink and said that he thought he already guessed why he called him here. Student Dowd? He replied, Ah, he's the one who's going to resurrect the demon, right? During the full moon festival, when security is down, he plans to commit mass murder, soaking the land with blood to gather demonic energy. He'll then unleash monsters and assassins to destroy the knights, which will only increase chaos and fear. All this is to awaken the demons slumbering within Lady Elnor. All these assassination attempts, these demon attacks, they were his work all along. But here's the thing, he's already reported everything to the rector, and she's taken all the necessary measures. So what will they do now? Galder, perplexed, thought, What? Now it makes sense why the seer is so attached to this boy. He seems harmless at first glance, but in reality he's far more cunning and sinister than anyone. You can't put a finger in his mouth. Then he said, That's impressive, but his men have already captured the princess. He certainly didn't expect that. At that moment, Elnor kicked in the door and Galder shouted, What? Princess Elnor? What? Then several of Galder's subordinates stood in her way and said she needed to come with them. Princess Elnor. They were taking her somewhere. She heard a voice. President, the demon worshippers could arrive at any minute. Her madness? It had only been getting worse recently, hadn't it? Now might not be the time, but sometimes it's best to just let it out. She said by imperial law, cultists can be dealt with before reporting them. The man put his hand on her shoulder and asked if she thought she could handle it. She said, Well, they'll find out now. She released a powerful energy, and he said she should try. They still need her alive. Maybe she just... Before he could finish, she grabbed his head and slammed it against the table. The others screamed, Damn it, we can't kill her. She's a valuable vessel for a demon, but minor wounds are acceptable. The next second, the men rushed at her, but she easily dealt with each one, kicking and attacking them with her sword. She advanced, cutting down everyone in her path, and the men screamed, To hell with it. She attacked the next guy, and the last one started running away in fear. Galder said he didn't believe it. At that moment, the protagonist asked the president, Is she okay? She wiped the sword with her hand and said, It even feels refreshing. The system reported that Elnor's affection level had reached friendship. Her madness had increased thanks to him. Then she looked at him and said, But their date, or rather, social reception, was ruined. Should they have a normal evening some other time? The system reported, A special mission is available. Gideon Latristan is showing an active interest in him. The protagonist wondered in surprise, why on earth would Elnor's father be interested in him? Well, the main thing is that this mission is about to end. At that moment, Galder took out the essence and said that he didn't think he'd have to use it. The protagonist thought, demonic essence? Wait, why did this thing appear now? He pointed his hand forward and shouted, President, she has to stop him. She looked ahead in surprise, and Galder told them to pray. With that, he threw the essence into his mouth. The next second, the entire building was engulfed in eerie energy. Then the building collapsed, and MC burst out of the rubble. Galder said, Amazing. He himself didn't plan to use it until he showed it to the prophet. Dowd. Now what, can he handle it? The demonic sphere glowed in his chest. The protagonist thought, whoever absorbed the demonic essence can use demonic power. Already in the first chapter, and here you have it. A demon. This world has gone completely crazy. Then the protagonist looked at Galder hovering in the air. The system reported that he must defeat the eraser. Defeat will result in hundreds of human casualties, he shouted. Now is the time for cleansing. The protagonist turned around and thought, Damn. The problem isn't just him. The Manitor, the demon worshippers Elnor dealt with, have revived again. Several monsters rushed at them at once, but they were pierced by powerful beams of energy. Talion shouted, The finishing touch from Lord Dowd. A piercing blow, he must see Lord Dowd. Then he stopped on the ground and, adjusting his hair, shouted, What on earth is going on here? Where is Marquise Riverback? And where did all these monsters come from? Have they seen his technique? He would appreciate their feedback. Then the protagonist said that it was all his colleagues who were turned. He shouted in surprise, What? He said that if he hadn't taken off the pendant, he would have suffered the same fate. Talion rose to his feet and, looking at him, asked, Was all this really a plot by the Marquis? He replied, Yeah, if he's not going to hell, he has to listen to him from now on. He replied that he understood. What's the plan, Mr. Dowd? He said he needed to sort out some things to protect the civilians and stop the Marquise. Talion said Mr. Dowd's strategic skills were top-notch, even in this situation. The protagonist shouted, In short, he has to kill them, Talion. He charged and shouted, Yes. At that moment, Elnor looked at the protagonist and asked if he knew where the Marquise was heading. He replied that he had one thought. The goal of all demon worshippers is the same. They sow despair and chaos everywhere, wanting to bring their sacred land, Pandemonium, to this world. which meant there was only one place he could go. After a while, Galder stopped after a huge barrier and said that even if he couldn't destroy all the protective barriers, he could at least make his contribution. He concentrated the energy in his hand and wanted to direct it forward as the protagonist said, "Now, don't move." He turned around in surprise and asked, "Dowd? How did he know he was here?" He replied that it was all too obvious. He had received the power of a demon and would simply pass by the place where evil was sealed. Absolutely not. Elnor held him on her back, and Galder said, and he saved him the trouble of looking for her. He would simply kill him and take the princess. The protagonist said, "No matter what happens, they will survive this night, understand?" With these words, he looked at Elnor, and she took up her weapon and thought, until now she had found it difficult to accept his trust in her. Now she felt that she was obliged to justify it, with all the greatness of the Tristan line. The Marquise asked, "Princess?" The next second, she kicked off the ground and delivered several attacks at once. The protagonist began to run in the opposite direction and shouted, "Here, big guy!" Eraser concentrated energy in his hand, and the protagonist shouted, "He can't reach him." A pulse of energy flew at the protagonist, but he dodged it, moving from side to side. Eraser screamed, "What?" At that moment, Elnor approached him and attacked him with her weapon, but was thrown back. MC continued to run forward. Galder rushed after him and shouted, "Slippery insect! He must come here and fight! Stop running! Princess, he's had enough!" Then he released another powerful blast of energy, and the protagonist and Elnor fell to the ground. After that, he shouted, "Fangs of darkness!" Powerful dark energy erupted from the demonic essence, and he shouted that he would deal with him once and for all. The next second, MC used the sacred shield, but it cracked under Galder's powerful blow, and a powerful beam of dark energy hit him right in the chest. He fell to the ground with a loud cry, and Galder laughed loudly and said he was tougher than he thought, but it seemed his trump cards were running low, right? At that moment, Elnor stood up in front of the protagonist and told him to get up. She would buy them some time. The matter could not wait. The Eraser said they were both so stubborn, such a perfect couple. Elnor frowned at him and thought that until now she had only been receiving. Had the time finally come to give? Hurry. The system reported that the health necklace has been activated. Recovery has begun. Stamina has been increased. Elnor concentrated energy in her hand and said that she believed in him until the very end. Galder said, "How touching. How long will they be conferring there?" She said, "Marquise Riverback, he should allow me to ask, did they look good together that evening?" He looked at her, then said, ad nauseum, "If they survive this, maybe they should start their own clan?" She thought for a moment, then abruptly pushed off the ground and struck the Eraser several times with her weapon. She screamed, Tramontana Maxima. Her eyes changed, and she attacked Galder with such force that he fell to the ground, cracking it. He screamed loudly, "That little rat!" He said, "Run away, damn rat." The student council president thought, no. Galder flew forward and screamed, "Where did he go?" At that moment, Conrad, lowering his sword into another monster, said, "I think they're done here." Ilya turned around and said, "Thank goodness the teachers got there in time. If even one of them hadn't been there, things could have turned out much worse." Percy agreed. It was good that she and Mr. Conrad listened to Dowd and came. He said the boys simply suggested grabbing a bite nearby. If they hadn't arrived in time, it could have all ended in disaster. Are such coincidences even possible? It's terrifying. At that moment, the protagonist was breathing heavily, clutching his chest, and thought, great. Talion had worked perfectly. He reached for the special device lying on the ground and thought, damn, how painful it would be if Elnor could hold on just a little longer. At that moment, she fell face first onto the ground next to him, and Galder said, "This is disgusting, but not an exaggeration, Lady Elnor." And he, student Dowd, "Does he still have any trump cards left? If not." With that, he pierced the protagonist's chest with a powerful beam of energy and said that he would die. Elnor looked at it in bewilderment. The system reported that the deadly charm had been activated. The target was him. The protagonist looked up in surprise, noticing how Elnor had transformed into a demon. The protagonist looked around in surprise, and the system reported an incident, an emerging threat. At that moment, Elnor hovered directly above him. The system reported an assessment. He thought part of the system was malfunctioning. His abilities were starting to fade. A gray demon had absorbed Elnor's body. The system reported a deadly charm, making it easier to attract the attention of villains. Elnor placed her hand on his chest, and the system reported that the more extreme the situation, the stronger the effect. The demon said, "What a delicious boy." Then a powerful energy pierced his body, and he looked in surprise at his chest, where a symbol appeared. The system reported, "The seal of the fallen received." The seal of the fallen effect. He thought the blow had been rewound. The demon hung in the air before him. He wondered why the most powerful being in this world was smiling so suspiciously. He didn't know what would happen next, but he needed to use copying. The system reported skill copying activated. He thought, what a powerful pressure. His brain was about to explode. His skin was literally melting. Elnor was connected to this demon. He urgently needed to learn one important skill. It would be useful both now and later. With these words, he pressed a button in the system window. The demon seemed to dissolve and said, "He'll be here soon. She really wants him." At that moment, Galder shouted that he would grind him into dust. He sent a powerful pulse straight at the protagonist. When the smoke cleared, he found only an empty pit from his blow. He asked in surprise, where did he go? Then he turned around in surprise. The protagonist was behind him and hit him with such force that Galder fell to the ground, covering it with cracks. He screamed, "What's going on?" The protagonist crouched opposite him, The system reported a threat detected. The threat is life-threatening. Desperate survival activated at EX rank. A new skill, Pandemonium King, is activated. He gains an absolute advantage over demon-type enemies for 5 minutes. The next second, his body changed and a powerful aura spread around him. His eyes turned black. Galder screamed, "How could a moron like him do such a thing? How could this little man?" At that moment, the protagonist suddenly charged, and he shouted, "Come on, he's a good man." He wouldn't say that again. Before he could finish, MC punched him in the face, sending him flying backwards. He rose to his feet and said, "Round 2, let's go." Galder rose to his feet and shouted, "The prophet never mentioned that." After a while, he lay on the ground, breathing heavily. He sat up and thought, "How?" He shouted, "How did he get an enhanced version of his power?" Then he emptied his stomach and thought, he'd been exhausting himself for years for this power, and some worthless idiot just got it. It's infuriating. It's so damn infuriating. With these thoughts, he rose to his feet and the system reported, "Black haze. The release of demonic essence energy can significantly enhance demonic power. The blessing of the flowing soul emits a black haze, strengthening the user's body, gaining increased physical defense." Galder screamed loudly, preparing to attack. They both concentrated energy in their hands, then punched each other. Powerful energy flew in different directions, and they jumped back. Galder grabbed the protagonist by the face and shouted, "You vile creature, he must die." He then struck with his fist, but the protagonist managed to put up a barrier. Galder shouted in surprise, "Divine magic? How can he even use that?" The next second, the protagonist kneed him in the head, sending him flying backwards, hitting a tower and slamming into it several times. MC flew up to him and swung for another blow. Then his eyes returned to their natural color, and he thought, the skill's timer has expired. At that moment, Galder fell onto the catapult and shouted in surprise, "What the hell is that?" The protagonist sighed and said, "It's good he didn't return it." He pressed the button, and then the eraser flew forward and shouted, "He's going to tear him to pieces." He turned around mid-flight and saw the MC holding a special device and asked, "Are those his last words?" Total bullshit. Then he unleashed a powerful blast of fire. The eraser wondered, how did he plan this all along? Then he dissolved into flames, and the system announced, "The main quest is complete." He received 1 demonic essence and 1 hero fragment as a reward, earning 5,000 points. The protagonist looked ahead and thought, wow, so many bonuses at once. Could this all be because of the increased difficulty? Usually there's a choice between these 2 options. He also received 2 more things that could derail the plot. Then Atalante flew up to him, and the protagonist said, "Now he has one of the 2. Exactly, Elnor." Atalante said that the student council president is safe. She folded her arms across her chest and added, "Student Dowd, it would be better to tell her what happened here and what he knows about the Grey Demon. She wants him to tell her everything in order, especially about the Grey Demon." He asked what she meant. She replied that she already knew everything he should tell her. "Student, he did contact the demon, didn't he?" After some time, the doctors stood by Elnor's bed and talked. "Is everything ready for the blood transfusion?" "Not yet, but almost." "Pulse? Weakening. Less than 50 beats per minute." Special sensors were attached to Elnor's body. Then she opened her eyes. People around were saying, "Damn, where are those priests?" Meanwhile, Atalante was sitting on the couch opposite the protagonist. She said, "One of the Grey Demon's powers is erosion. Its manifestation is especially noticeable in the area where they were found. The Inquisition and the Holy Empire won't let this go. He's in deep trouble." Did he realize how this would all turn out when he used his power? He thought he'd long since realized he wasn't destined to be a mere supporting character, especially now that his connection with the demon had been firmly established. He asked, honestly, he'd just gotten lucky. She said the strongest of Pandemonium's rulers, the Grey Demon, was using the student council president's body as a vessel, as she suspected. The protagonist asked, "Rector, how did she know?" She told him to forgive her. Above all, she was grateful to him, Dowd, for joining the fight for the academy and protecting Elnor. She pulled him closer and told him he could rest for now and listen, as what she was about to say was strictly confidential. She laid his head on her lap and added, "After the last heroic battle, the demon fragments were scattered. If even one of them manifested in this world, the rest would begin to flock to this one. Because the Grey Demon had awakened yesterday, albeit briefly." MC said the process had already begun. She said she was talking about other demonic vessels. The protagonist thought, in the original, demonic vessels always brought disaster. The Crimson Demon vessel, for example, was the cause of the Crimson Night, a catastrophe that claimed the lives of Ilya's entire family. These fragments and vessels are randomly assigned and also randomly activated in the game. Only the settings of Ilya and Elnor remain unchanged. Atalante said, "The Holy Empire's intelligence network is a significant threat. They have already calculated the possible vessel candidates, and Elnor is on that list. Therefore, she has gathered them all in her academy, as much as possible." He thought, so the candidates have already been identified and assembled? Impressive. But isn't it a bit presumptuous to gather all these dangerous guys in one place? Then she added, "True love. A demonic vessel once fell in love with a human, and this feeling destroyed the fragment inside it. Love has the power to eradicate the seed of destruction." He thought, classic cliche bullshit. He can't do anything about it. Then Atalante added, "It seems the Grey Demon has taken a liking to him, Dowd." He shouted indignantly. "What? She didn't. Not at all." She placed her hand on his chest and said that she saw everything, albeit from afar. She healed his wounds and cooed tenderly to him, didn't she? He shouted. Maybe she just felt sorry for him? She answered. Whatever the case, this is the key point. The demon was suspiciously friendly with him, Dowd. She was already convinced of his diligence, deep knowledge, and prudence. Therefore, she sincerely asks for one thing. She leaned towards him and said, he must seduce the demoness. Then MC abruptly pulled away from her and shouted, what the hell? What is she saying and asking, Rector? She said that she is creating all the conditions for the flirtation to go smoothly. He shouted, but that is not the point. She told him not to worry. All the candidates she knew were women. This was an opportunity sent to him from above. Even the gray demon was enchanted by him. She thought the others wouldn't be a problem either. He thought, even if he could, did she think he'd be a lone nerd? After that, she told him to use any means necessary to seduce them and destroy the demonic fragments, and the world would be saved. He sat up and asked her to wait. Hadn't she said true love? Did she want him to toy with the feelings of several women at once? She asked, who has it easy these days? Demonic vessels are difficult enough, and on top of that, demon worshippers are always behind them. The protagonist thought, how does that make his lot easier? The rector closed her eyes and said, after all, she must ask him. She lowered her head and said, she asks him to save humanity. He thought he wanted to quit the game, and then said, Rector, I think he already knows the answer. But what if he fails to seduce her? She replied that she had already explained this in chapter 14. The world is ending, humanity will be destroyed. An empire ruled by demons is coming, she thinks. He thought, the developers, he hates them. After a while, Elnor woke up and asked, did they win? A loud scream was heard in the hallway. Student, you can't barge in like that. The girl answered, but she came yesterday too. She even missed classes. Beatrix entered the room and said, she doesn't think she'll wake up soon. She didn't finish, but screamed loudly. She? Elnor smiled and asked, did she miss classes? Beatrix ran up to her and screamed. How could she? Oh, I swear. She'll drive her crazy, honestly. She rushed to Elnor and said, I thought she was going to die. What kind of fight was that anyway? Elnor ordered her to calm down. By the way, what's wrong with Dowd? Beatrix asked again. Dowd? She wiped away her tears and said, he's already been discharged. Elnor asked again, he's been discharged? Beatrix answered, yes, he's almost unharmed. Only she was seriously injured. They were all afraid that she would die. Elnor replied, she is fine. Does this mean that Dowd is completely alright? Some time ago, Beatrix said, Dowd Campbell, 2 days have passed, and he is already on his feet. If she does not wake up, she will personally kill him. MC handed her flowers and told her not to worry. Elnor is not the type to just give up. He guarantees that she will wake up in a couple of days. Beatrix asked how he can guarantee that. MC replied, well, he is alive. If someone like her risked her life to protect someone like him, then Tristan can call himself one. Currently, Beatrix winked at Elnor and told her to forget about him for now. Miss President, does she have enough strength to hold a pen? While she was unconscious, things piled up. Elnor looked at her with displeasure and said, actually, she is still a patient. Beatrix said yes. But there are a couple of urgent matters. 2 important people are arriving to see them, Miss President. The first is Saint Lucienne. Elnor asked if she wasn't supposed to arrive next semester. Beatrix replied that it was planned that way. But now she says she'll be arriving next week. The incident with her favorite has the Holy Empire and the Inquisition in an uproar. She didn't want to mention the second one. Elnor turned around and asked who it was. Beatrix said Sir Gideon would be arriving at the academy soon. Elnor said, surprised, Father. After a while, the knight stood by the window and said, it's so lively here, even invigorating. Lucienne asked if he could close the window. The light was bothering her. Valkarthus turned slightly and said, funny, a saint doesn't like light. She replied, if he himself had lived half his life in a dark chapel, she would have looked at him. Valkarthus said, their conversation has taken a wrong turn, Saint. Lucienne closed her eyes and ordered the window to be closed, Sir Knight. He turned and said he wanted to enjoy this peace a little longer. Lucian smoked and asked, peace? A demon worshipper and a saint in the same room. What peace could they possibly be talking about? Valkarthus smirked and said, well, he thinks they've grown closer, especially considering how strained their first acquaintance had been. Lucian replied, they have a common goal, and they're only collaborating for that purpose. There's no need to entertain any illusions. They're not friends. Or was he already dreaming of someone else? The knight asked, a little? The people who keep her on a leash, or fate, which holds his life in its fist. What difference does it make, really? Lucian told Valkarthus to think as he wished. At least she has someone she's obligated to protect. After this, MC read a letter from his father. His dear son, it's almost summer. He'd heard it was especially hot there. He should take care of his health. He'll send him some fruit, let him share it with his friends. By the way, the day of the parental visit is coming soon, but he's busy here. The harvest is in full swing, so he probably won't be able to come. He'll send Herman. If he needs anything, don't be shy. Let him ask him. Everything is calm between them. No need to worry. And he knows what? Let him stay somewhere in the middle. That's important. He's a smart guy, so he doesn't have to worry. Let him not cause trouble and study peacefully. Does he understand? And one more thing. If he suddenly gets a girlfriend, let him definitely bring her on vacation. Dad will see his grandchildren's faces one day, right? Well, anyway, he gets it. His loving father, Campbell. MC read the letter and thought, yeah, how could he possibly not come? Dowd looked up and asked, so he's Herman? An assistant butler or something like that? Herman smiled and replied, Yes, that's right, young master. If he has any instructions, let him speak, but please speak more slowly. Dowd asked if he was being too open about his tone, the scoundrel. After a while, Herman brought a cup of berries and said, "Here are his grapes for my lord." MC tried them and asked, "Are they seedless?" Herman replied, "Yes, sweet." The guy turned around and said discontentedly, "Just let her look at him." He had dragged the servants to the academy. Even here, he decided to act like an idle aristocrat. The girls spoke up. "There's another one. What a nightmare." MC wiped his mouth and said, "Herman, they better act like they're friends." Herman asked again, "Really?" Dowd replied, "Yes, here, let him eat too." Herman grabbed the grapes with his teeth and muttered, "He's got a problem." MC said, "He'll never get out of being an assistant like that." He thought, okay, no time to relax. What the rector had told him was too shocking. He remembered Adelante's words and the messages about Gideon and Elnor's relationship, and he thought that right now, he had no time to save the world. He needed to save himself. And all these guests were just the beginning. The system window announced, Main Quest, Chapter 2, The Boy King of an Abandoned Kingdom. The days until the event were unknown. The main problem was the battle with the boss of Chapter 2. Of course, the first thing he needed to think of was a strategy, but he hadn't even met Gideon in the original playthrough. What should he do? Gehrman looked at the sky and said, "It's so hot here, sir. Hotter than the estate." Dowd clutched his head and thought. According to the original, at the time of the main story, Gideon lay quietly and peacefully in a coffin. He had no particular connection with his daughter, but a father is a father. According to canon, the trigger for the awakening of the Grey Demon was precisely Gideon's death, but he appeared during the battle with the first boss. Horrible, how confusing everything was. Gehrman waved his hand and cried out, "How are you?" Talion frowned and wondered why Master Dowd looked like he was in despair. Because of this guy or something? MC thought, if Gideon was alive, then the scenario he was familiar with went completely differently. Okay, Elnor's dad, he will meet him. No, actually, he should avoid him. Just avoid him. But if they do encounter each other, he needs to make the most of it. Otherwise, he won't be able to cope with the boss of the second chapter. Dowd came out of his thoughts and cried out, "Talion, what is he doing with his servant?" Talion looked at him puzzled and asked, "What? A servant?" And he thought he was insulting him. MC said, "That lazy idiot wouldn't hurt a fly, but he insulted him, so he will borrow his sword for another day." Talion asked why. He fell to his knees and held out his sword. He said, "He is doing him a great honor for no reason. Here, let him take it. He'll be happy to." MC said no, he'd changed his mind. After a while, Elnor said, "How interesting. He went to study theology and then came to her for fencing lessons?" Dowd replied, "He'd learned something after the incident with the demon. Holy power alone isn't enough when it comes to close combat. He'd like to learn the basics of Tristan's fencing." He thought, thanks to Elnor's deadly charm, she couldn't refuse him. She said thoughtfully, for the first time, she liked his words. She drew her sword and said that since he was asking for self-improvement, she would help. MC thought, he should use this chance and copy her fighting style as much as possible. If a meeting with Gideon is inevitable, this will come in very handy. Suddenly, a voice came from the side, an unusual sight. For the busy student council president to come out to the training grounds for a private lesson. Elnor looked at Ilya with displeasure and said, "Dowd asked for it himself." Ilya asked again, "Really? But she specializes in one-handed weapons, right? And Dowd uses two-handed ones." MC said, "Well, it doesn't matter." Elnor said, "The type of sword doesn't matter." But the teacher, "Yes, it does." MC asked her just not to start. Ilya said, "Exactly. So it would be better if she were to teach him." "Does she agree?" Elnor got angry and asked, "Does she mean to say that her methods are better than hers?" A minor. Ilya asked, "Well, what about her? How could she possibly outsmart the student council president?" MC was already very frightened by their conversation, and Ilya grabbed the hilt of the sword and said, "But despite the weakness of the Tristan clan's swordsmanship, she knows it very well." Elnor asked, "Then maybe she could show her?" Ilya answered, "On the condition that there would be no self-harm." Herman said in surprise, "Is this what they call a duel?" Ilya smirked and asked, "Will she not use the power of the Tristan clan?" "Madam President," Elnor replied, "unless she forces her." MC cried out, "He actually came here to study. Why is there a fight here?" Herman said, "He thinks they can't be stopped now." Ilya swung her sword and screamed, "Oh well." She ordered her to tell her what she was doing wrong. Elnor looked at her and said, "Her movements are too sweeping." Ilya quickly put her sword to her throat, but Elnor quickly reversed her attack and began to attack. Ilya thought, how fast. But that doesn't diminish the power of the blows. Elnor swung her sword and Ilya blocked the blow and thought, so what is she doing? Does she want to lose to the devil? Ilya attacked Elnor and thought, Elnor, she belongs to a family with demon blood in her veins. No matter how noble the family, one day she will lose control and submit to the devil, whether she wants it or not. A common deal with the devil. Ilya swung her sword and shouted, "Guardian strike!" She sent a huge stream of fire towards Elnor, and Dowd's eyes widened in confusion. He asked, "What?" Elnor said it was hard to resist something like emotions. She swung her sword and protected MC. Ilya looked at Gehrman and fearfully asked for forgiveness. Dowd thought, is this really human reaction speed? Even faster and stronger than before. Has she already started the process of fusing with the demon? Ilya screamed. She overdid it. Let the president forgive her. Ilya frowned and said that her swordsmanship is at a high level, but for a hero candidate, more is required than just swinging a sword. Injuring allies is unacceptable. Ilya said she was right. She asked Dowd to forgive her and, looking around, asked where he went. After a while, MC walked through the forest and thought, judging by Elnor's condition, he can't sit idle. If he slacks off, nothing good will come of it. He needs to work really hard. He wasn't going to limit himself to just fencing anyway. Holy power is also important for survival. This means he needs to pump up not only physical, but also holy powers. And for that, he put on his mask and approached the hut. He asked, "How is she doing here?" "She looks cheerful." Yuria was eating an apple and turned around, her eyes wide with surprise. She said, Yuria Greyhounder, the saint's younger sister. It's her turn to help him. Some time ago, Yuria was asked if does she still hope that someone will save her? Does she hope that someone will become her friend? The man said in vain, it will only hurt her more in the end. The sooner she understands, the better. Hope is the beginning of despair. Let her come to terms with it. Blood dripped from the sword onto Yuria, and the man said, like her sister, she is just a victim of the curse, and she is destined to remain alone until death. This is the only way to protect the others. It is her duty, Yuria. After a while, she woke up in a cold sweat on the floor and widened her eyes in fear. Currently, she was picking apples and heard a voice behind her. How is she here? She looks cheerful. Yuria turned around in fear and swung her sword. MC parried it, and Yuria asked, Why? Why did he go into the kill zone? He knows it's dangerous, right? She swung her sword and asked him to step back. She said to step back. He'll get hurt. Dowd jumped back and parried the attack again, then fell to the ground and cried out. He said, judging by how deftly she swung that thing, she was fine. He promised to visit her from time to time and bring her treats. She hadn't forgotten him, had she? He didn't know what she liked, so he brought a little bit of everything. It should be enough for her for 2, maybe 3 days. He threw the bag towards Yuria and said, and as for her, doesn't the loneliness from the forced distance from people weigh heavily on her? If he were to drop in and chat with her like this, would she mind? Yuria looked at him in surprise and remembered the man's words. The sooner she understood, the better. She was just a victim of a curse, and she was destined to remain alone until she died. Let her accept it. At the present time, Dowd told her to eat, and he was leaving. Yuria kept remembering the man's words. Was she still hoping that someone would save her? She was hoping that someone would become her friend. In vain, it would only hurt her more in the end. At the present time, Yuria was sitting in the hut and looking at all the food MC had brought. She picked up a loaf of bread and said thoughtfully, she won't. She burst into tears and said, and it didn't hurt at all. The system window reported that the villain's attention to him had increased significantly. Yuria Greyhounder, her affection level is 1. The reward is ready to be issued. MC looked at this and asked, why is that? He just spent a couple of days with her and already reached affection level 1. He exhaled and said, okay, they'll look at the rewards. Herman was sitting on the bed and sleeping, holding his clothes in his hands. The system window reported the skill Swordsman's Focus rank B, which increases reaction speed and accuracy in combat. Dowd closed the tab and said, not bad. Combined with desperate survival, it could be very effective. But right now, he's more worried that idiot Herman is still sleeping. He's relaxed too much. Today is visiting day. The system window reported that the Tristan clan's fencing technique is independent of the weapon type. You can now parry attacks and have a small chance to ignore defense. MC thought there would be students, parents, aristocrats, even royalty and merchants there. He trained hard with Yuria for this day. He shouted, they're late, Herman. Herman opened his eyes and suggested that they go then, young master. Dowd said he only needed to impress one person today, Gideon Latristan. He's a fencing genius who never showed up in the original. After some time on the street, a knight said, my lord, if walking is too much for him, he can carry him. The old man replied, everything is fine. Sometimes it is useful to walk on mortal earth. The woman with the fan said, she heard that even the Holy Empire will be participating this year. The man replied, it can't be. Then, maybe it was those same glorious knights. Voices were heard everywhere. My God, it's true. The Holy Empire is really participating. What's more important, will their son join the royal battle? He is in the 2nd class. They will definitely let him participate. The host spoke, dear parents and honored guests who have come a long way. Their Elfonte Academy. This is the highest educational institution of the empire. It is an honor for them to host them in demonstration classes. The traditional welcoming event, the royal battle, it will begin very soon. The men asked, wait, is it really him? It can't be. Are they joking? Why would someone like him? A man who only appears on the battlefield. Gideon sat with his arms folded across his chest, and people whispered, why on earth would he come to an open academy event? Quietly, his daughter is actually the student council president. That's true, but he didn't even come to the entrance ceremony. Really? They say he's a cold-blooded man who only wants to hand out combat equipment. That's why no one talks to him or even approaches him. Suddenly, Conrad approached Gideon and asked in surprise, is it him, Gideon? What brought him here? Gideon looked up and said, Baltador, aren't you tired of lecturing children? Conrad replied, not at all. What brought him here today? Gideon folded his arms across his chest and said he just went out for a walk between practices. Conrad said, well, of course, practice. And how are things going in your attempts to catch the first Duke of Tristan? Gideon replied, he trains strictly according to protocol. It says there he must build a great mountain. Conrad said it was difficult. How are you doing? Gideon frowned in irritation and replied, first, he cut down a mountain. Conrad said, an incredibly primitive interpretation. The host said, attention everyone, the battle royale is about to begin. All participants are first-year volunteers. Their fights will be supervised by experts and medics. Conrad said to take a closer look. This year's newcomers are quite strong. The girls said that each student's preferred weapon is a wooden replica. Participants on stage. Shouts began to ring out from all sides. Youngest, she can do it. Edward, he better make it into the top 10. MC stepped onto the stage and thought, horrible, coming out here. He even felt a little nervous. I wonder if his character felt the same way? Horror. Why did he even volunteer? Did he really need to get Gideon's attention? Talion chuckled and said, only they are suitable for the final showdown. Elnor, as a hero candidate, cannot participate, so there are no obstacles for them. The host said that whoever needs a weapon should come and take it. Ilya thought, Dowd, why does he need this hassle with participating in observation matches? Does he enjoy beating weaklings? Or is this some part of his duty as an aristocrat? The host said to choose their weapons wisely. The fight starts in a minute. She asked all participants to enter the arena. There is only one goal in this match, to be the last one standing. The winner will receive bonus points, and those who make it into the top 10 will also receive points. Herman put his hands to his mouth and whispered, sir, he thinks the top 10 is enough for him. MC thought, he's probably already sitting somewhere, right Gideon? Let him watch him, come on. Ilya thought, she's watching, Dowd, let him not worry. She believes in him, but if something happens, she will immediately come to the rescue. The host ordered the participants to bow to each other and get ready. Elnor came to this meeting and stopped. The host ordered it to begin. Everyone rushed into battle, and Talion said, Mr. Dowd, there will be no leniency. The MC asked if he was hitting only him on purpose. He dodged and said, that's how you parry, idiot. Gideon turned his attention to him, when suddenly a scream rang out. Are the two of them having fun? The system window reported a threat detected, and Lilu flew into MC's body with a kick. He staggered and thought, Lilu, she screamed. What are they doing? Let them come here. Dowd thought, Lilu Garuda? The second daughter of the great leader of the tribal unions? A character who only appears in chapter 5? Talion screamed, Mr. Dowd. MC thought, and more importantly, Ilya screamed, who is this anyway? Lilu threw off her cloak and asked, don't they want to come? Fine, she'll come herself. She's a sadist who gets pleasure from beating people. Body painting is a conspiracy technique widely used in tribal unions. Even with an EX-level desperate survival technique, victory is not guaranteed. Right now, this is an opponent more terrifying than Elnor. Talion said he protected such a worthless him, Mr. Dowd. He burst into tears and said he was ready to cover the enemy who had just attacked him. MC thought, but why was Lulu participating in this event? Maybe she wasn't famous yet? Talion said he swears to him he will elevate him to first place today. MC said he should run away, Talion. Talion stepped forward and ordered the newcomer to listen up. She would have to deal with him first. His name is Talion Armand, a rising star. She thinks she can handle him? Lulu asked again. A star, he says. Then he doesn't have to hold back. She stretched her hand to his chest, and the system window reported that the swordsman's focus skill had been activated. Reaction speed and accuracy had been increased. Lulu smirked and said, be careful not to die, okay? She waved her hand and attacked Talion. He flew back, and MC released mana on his sword. The students scattered in different directions, and Dowd thought he had parried accurately, but the shockwaves still caught him. Voices came from the stands. Is there a newbie there? That's impressive, Elfante. Lulu looked at the standing MC and asked, what the? She thought he was just a newbie, so he was holding back too, right? Lilu said in surprise. He really did hold back. Then now she'll hit him with full force. MC thought, will he be able to defeat this crazy woman with his current stats if she hits him with full force? Elnor and Gideon said, no way. MC thought, this is absurd even in a dream. Lilu swung her leg, then clenched her fists and started attacking. Dowd thought, now is not the time. It's not worth it. He ordered her to stop and said that he gives up. Lilu's eyes widened in confusion, and the host asked, is he giving up, student? He answered, yes, he wants to retreat. All the people in the stand started to murmur discontentedly. You cowardly idiot. Well, where is his aristocratic honor? Ilya said. Dowd, that's a wise choice. The MC came down and thought they booed him to the fullest extent. They would have tried it themselves. They wouldn't have done it even under duress. The host said, okay, they'll continue. It looks like the winner has been determined, but wait, are there still participants left? Then they'll continue. Lulu clenched her jaw and said, but the fun has only just begun. She clenched her fists and screamed, damned imperial rats. What are they good for anyway? The system window reported, deadly charm. The seed of explosive affection has been sown. The MC exhaled and said, what a timely departure. They don't even let him give up like a human being. Suddenly, a bag was put over his head, and after a while, in another room, it was removed. A voice said, Dowd Campbell. The MC widened his eyes in surprise and thought, just a minute, he's not mentally prepared yet. Gideon asked what his relationship with his daughter was like. MC said fearfully, Well, she helps him with his studies. They're friends. Gideon asked if he learned to fence like that from her. Dowd calmed himself and ordered himself to breathe. That's what he planned. Yes. He said no, sir. Gideon asked again, where did he learn that? It's a fencing technique of the Tristan family. MC thought, as expected. Duke Gideon noticed. He spoke. He immediately understood, sir. Gideon said, that's the basis of the family fencing technique. Does he really think he couldn't recognize refraction? He ordered to answer. Who taught him that technique? MC frowned and thought, he can't show that he's nervous. This man, he's like a living blade. If he gives in, all his plans will fall apart. He said, he knows this man Duke, the elusive emperor of the sword. He had even managed to visit their wilderness. He mentally asked him to just believe him. Gideon asked, is he saying his teacher taught him? What a ridiculous lie. Let him continue. MC thought, the best way to hide the tree is to hide it in the forest. He said, it's true. He even gave him a personal task. MC thought, a small lie to cover up a much larger deception. Gideon asked, a task? Him what? Dowd answered, yes, to be precise, it's a whole mission. Duke Tristan, he asks to let him teach him fencing. Gideon asked again, does he want to teach him fencing? And he claims that his teacher entrusted it to him? MC answered, that's right. Gideon said, that's a bold statement. Is he ready to take responsibility for this? Dowd answered, he is ready. Gideon said, great. MC thought, is he ready? Seriously? Who knows? He's just betting on the strength of the original plot. And this is his first time seeing him. Out of all the players, he's the first one to see him alive. He may be Elnor's father and all, but his skills, he has no idea how strong he is. He's clearly assessing him now. It's understandable. He came out of nowhere and said that. Yeah, he understands him perfectly. He hates these awkward pauses. Gideon waved his finger in front of Dowd and asked, he's not going to stop this? MC asked again. What? Gideon frowned and said he's already used it on him. The table and the mug split in two, which scared MC. He thought, it's a shapeless sword. It's a skill that cuts even a shadow without leaving a trace. A skill superior to any other swordsmanship. Is that what it is? Gideon said. He died again. Pathetic. Someone who can't even react to this, what can he even teach him? Dowd thought, this is without a doubt the strongest swordsmanship technique, worthy of the best knight in the Empire. One who can pierce even dragon scales, but it's not complete. MC said, the rumors were true. He's incredible, Sir Gideon. However, if the technique were complete, not even a hint of movement would be visible. He's right? Gideon's eyes widened in surprise and asked what he even knew to draw such conclusions. Dowd thought, well, he knows everything. That's why he's talking. In the original story, there was a diary Gideon left behind after his death, a detailed description of how he became strong, the history of his family, teacher, and MC said he seemed to be striving for something. Gideon looked at him puzzled and then said, to break the curse of his lineage, he must overcome something. Some time ago, the teacher said, his student, he must cut the sea in half. MC said he'd probably start with the sea. The power of rotation is key. The moment the image is formed, you need to draw a perfect line and add rotation. He told Gideon to try to hit a little harder. He closed his eyes, and MC thought, honestly, he doesn't fully understand what all this means. He just remembered this phrase from Gideon's diary. Advice from him from the future to him from the present. The rest is up to him. Gideon froze in surprise and looked around to see that everything around was cracked. He brought everything back to perfect condition and asked, who the hell is he? MC replied, he's just someone who wants to help Sir Gideon become stronger. He thought, then he won't die, and Elnor won't be consumed by darkness. One way or another, he did it. The letter of guarantee is a privilege of the Tristan family, which exempts from one legal punishment. And the document giving the Danish guarantee is signed by Gideon himself. After all, at the moment, he is the chief imperial executioner, the one who cleans up the dirty deeds within the empire from the shadows. In short, a hunting dog. In short, this piece of paper will be very useful in the second chapter. The system window reported, deadly charm. The more the villain likes him, the more generous and powerful his gifts become. After some time, Dowd sat in the room and asked, wait, can this be upgraded? The system window reported, upgrading the gift deadly charm. The more the villain acknowledges it, the more varied the rewards. Received a manual from Gideon. MC exhaled and asked, what kind of skill is that? The system window reported, manual. When the villain's skills blossom, he gains the ability to temporarily use those same skills. MC thought, just in time. This is exactly what he needs to put his plan into action. Dowd sat at the table and spoke thoughtfully. This should be enough for the next part of the plan. Well, who has it easy these days? He gave his word to Gideon, so Tristan's family, he would protect them no matter what. After some time in class, the teacher pointed to the board and said, so every person is God's creation, and therefore a bearer of divine power. It obeys completely different laws than magic, and not only a select few can use it. However, to reach this level, it is enough to maintain divine power. The teacher looked at the students and wondered, did this idiot come here to listen or to sleep? Why, in fact, were there even more empty seats? It's all because of that idiot Riverback. He doesn't care if he brings monsters or zombies to school, but a demon worshipper? That's too much. There are already too many idiots this semester. Even the professor got hit. It's good at least no one found out that he and Riverback are in cahoots. He'll just wait a bit and then get out of here. Exactly. He needs to get out of here. This place. Suddenly a voice rang out. he has a question. How does he train his divine powers? The teacher skied in displeasure and thought, what an idiot. The teacher replied, it's a common practice, young man. This applies not only to divine powers but to anything. What is there to ask about anyway? MC asked, but being interested is a good thing, right? The teacher yelled, enough with the inappropriate questions. Classes are over. After a while, the teacher said, that's crazy. That's true. Why is he always being rude to him? He thought, okay, he'll take the secret information and go look for a new job. He won't have to look at those disgusting faces and the dean anymore. He needs to get out of this damned empire. Yes, and soon. At that moment there was a knock on the office door and a voice rang out. Professor? He thought how tired he was of these idiots. Okay, he'll play the professor one last time. He's leaving soon anyway. He went to the door and ordered them not to break down his door. Suddenly the door swung open and hit the professor. He fell to the floor and blood gushed from his nose. A voice rang out, wow, he hasn't run away yet. The professor screamed in irritation. Has she gone crazy? How dare she hit the professor? Elnor said, she hit the door. Now it's his turn. She hung her heel over the professor's face, and after a while, she tied him up. He spoke his head. He screamed, what does all this mean? Anyway, MC stood in front of him and asked, are you sure he's from the theology department? The professor screamed. Have they completely lost their minds, idiots? They think they can get away with bullying the professor? Dowd said, but they're not bullying. He's under arrest, professor. The teacher screamed. What kind of nonsense is he talking about? He's under arrest? On what grounds? What did he even do? Elnor answered, he's a spy. The professor asked again, what? Elnor said, they've already reported to the dean that he facilitated the escape of a monster. A professor who endangers his students? The conclusion is obvious. He didn't come here to teach at all. And also, they found his correspondence with the Marquise of Riverback. The professor screamed, this is slander. Why on earth would he, a clergyman, get involved with this filthy demon worshipper? He simply answered out of politeness, he's the victim here. MC looked at his watch and said, quiet, they don't have much time. Let them get to the point. Elnor ordered the names of the remaining spies in this academy to be given. The professor chuckled and told her to ask her mother. Elnor quickly slapped him across the face and then asked, is he ready to talk now? Well, they will begin. The professor replied, Barrymore from security. Annie from the cafeteria. Dowd put his hand to his head and said, his pronunciation is poor, remedium. He screamed, what? What is he doing? MC replied, he healed him with divine powers. He himself said that they have many useful applications, so he uses them wherever possible. Remedium screamed, what a crazy kid. What is he planning? Dowd said thoughtfully, he doesn't look like the type to give up after a couple of names. Elnor ordered to check his desk. Maybe something will come up. Remedy screamed, anything but that. MC asked to stop and asked, what the hell is this? He said in surprise, Professor, he's an ordinary priest. Why does he have so much interest in military organization? If it comes to that, why doesn't he just enlist in the army? Remedium shoved his hand in his face and ordered him to hand it over quickly. Elnor attacked him and threw him aside. Lulu came out of the shower at that moment and asked, what were those sounds? An earthquake? Dowd asked, Professor, is that all? He scattered the documents in different directions, and Remedium could only grunt in response. Elnor said that she thought that was all. They could hand him over to the Academy Knights now. MC asked the president for a minute and asked, he's still a newbie, right? Can he practice using his divine powers a little? Remedy thought, now he understands why he was so disgusted by that idiot. Even then, he met a similar guy with Riverback. Some time ago, he knelt down and said, predecessor, meeting him is a great honor. The voice answered, if he asks about him, he will die. If he tells that he saw him, he will die. If he forgets about her, he himself will beg for death. MC frowned and thought, he really is like that. This strange, lingering feeling of inadequacy. He said, okay, they will start their treatment? Professor. He thought as if something was totally wrong. After a while, MC thanked the president and said, they caught a rat in the professor's skin. Let her say, is it relaxing? Elnor answered, not really. She is not the type to enjoy beating up old people. The system window reported that Elnor's madness is decreasing. Dowd thought, yes, it is decreasing. But there's nothing to be done about it. A problem like this cannot be solved by one wish. Elnor asked, by the way, does he want to tell her anything? Dowd asked, did he think so? Elnor said, it's just that he saw her father. Why did he seek a meeting with him? MC asked again in fear. Why? Elnor said, yes, that is exactly what she asked. Dowd said, yeah, right. Yes, he really did meet him, but he didn't tell anyone about it. Elnor asked again, what? MC bit his finger and thought, horror, so this is an unexpected turn of events for him. He needs to think quickly. The idiot. Elnor asked, he didn't get hurt because of him, right? MC screamed, no way. It's just that the technique he used in the last fight seemed familiar to him. That's why he started asking questions. That's all. Elnor asked again, so he called him just out of curiosity? Duke Tristan himself? Dowd answered nervously, it's just that her lessons weren't in vain. Not many people can use the fencing techniques of the Tristan family. Elnor said, okay, whatever he says. He's not the type to discuss fencing techniques with a greenhorn, but it's none of her business, so she won't pry. MC said he thought they would meet him again, with the Duke. After all, he was her father. He simply couldn't pass by. He looked away and thought, it sounded strange, of course. What could he even do for them? Idiot? Elnor turned around and said, he knows, Dowd. Hadn't he started addressing her too informally? He turned around, frightened, and Elnor straightened her cap and told him to first tidy up his manners. She told him to address her as president. After a while, a loud shout rang out in the room. Young master, is he talking to Lady Tristan again? But Barry asked not to attract attention, didn't he? Dowd turned around and said, He only has 3 friends in this academy anyway. One of them is Lady Tristan. Herman said, young master, does that mean he's lonely? MC turned around and said, however, they can hardly be called friends either. Isn't he too dissolute for a servant? He looked at the ice cream cone in Herman's hands and asked where he got that. Herman replied, they're handing it out for free at the entrance. Support in honor of midterm exams. There are 31 flavors. Dowd thought, right. A summoning session is coming. The system window reported an epic rank soulbinder. A fusion of spiritual fragments. It can be awakened with a sufficient level of spiritual awareness. He turned to Herman and said, that's an order. Let him try the remaining 30 flavors and return with a report. Herman headed toward the exit and said, he's already running, sir. MC thought, this guy doesn't look like a servant at all. He thinks he can already awaken a spiritual entity in Gregory's Hall. This is all because his divine powers have strengthened after being healed by the priest. If you awaken a great spirit may appear who helps the player progress. But everything is subject to randomness. He will never guess who will fall. There are so many possibilities. If someone incompatible with him appears, it will be a complete nightmare. Activation. A scream rang out. What kind of horror is this? And there are terrible gacha cards here. MC was transported to another space and heard a scream. It looks impressive. Dowd thought fearfully. A knight? Who is it? Spearman Frederick or Tank Johan? He looked in surprise at the red hair and thought, who was it? He swears he's seen him before. Well, it doesn't seem like a complete nightmare. Who is he? The character turned around and the system window reported, Guardian of Dawn, Calivan Chrysanax. MC screamed in fear. Ilya's older brother? Some time ago, the city was completely devastated, the consequences of which people tried to clean up. The vessel of the Crimson Demon caused the Scarlet Knight disaster. The flames did not go out until the Imperial Guard intervened. Guardian Calivan gave his life to stop the Scarlet Knight. After death, he became a spirit. Ilya fell to her knees and burst into tears, screaming that he had promised to return and that she needed to wait a little longer. But any death is a tragedy for a family. On the day Ilya lost her entire family, she made a decision. Follow in her brother's footsteps. Find and destroy the demon that orphaned her. After a while, Ilya heard loud screams. He said to hit harder. Whoever gets there first will get a chance to fight Ilya. The teacher demanded to welcome the only heroic participant in the national selection, Ilya Chrysanax. Applause. From this moment on, she is officially awarded the title of Candidate for Hero of the Empire. She has decided to become a hero. After a while, the teacher said that the midterm exams will be held in a team format of 4 people. So, who is their empire's main enemy? The students answered, magical monsters and minions of the devil. The teacher answered, exactly. Elfante Academy was created specifically to fight them. Therefore, in this exam, they will be evaluated on 2 main criteria, combat skills and survivability. MC asked, what will Calivan say? Is his sister doing well? Calivan asked, he says that child, is she his little sister? A candidate for the hero of the empire? Dowd answered, yes, it's official. Calivan said, what a wretch she is. She was just a little girl once. Dowd said, Ilya is already an adult. Calivan said, it was worth it. MC looked at him questioningly, and Calivan answered, no, nothing. He's just uncomfortable seeing his sister grow up, already being a spirit. He's not used to it yet. MC said, well, since he brought him back to the world of the living then. Calivan asked, he wants him to cooperate, right? Dowd answered, yes. He will help him, right? Calivan asked, why not? Just let him not tell his sister anything. Dowd said, yes, sir. Thank you, Sir Calivan. He smiled and said, he knows. He has a sense of someone who has already crossed the brink of death. He's clearly not telling him something, but he still seems like a good guy. Let him keep an eye on his sister. He's counting on him. MC said, for now, he's just trying to make sure no one dies. He walked up to Ilya and called out to her. She turned around and said happily, Dowd. He mentioned the team. If she's not already taken, does she want to work with him? Ilya asked, surprised. What? He wants to team up? MC replied, yes, he'd really like to try with her. Ilya asked, wasn't he the one who said last time that they weren't that close? Dowd said, he apologized for that. And now he's asking because he really needs her help, Ilya. She asked, to do weird stuff again? Suddenly, Luca yelled, let him take her. She still tries day and night to defeat him. She only talks about him. MC said, okay, if they don't mind, he'll take her. Luca said he was only glad. Before he could finish speaking, Trisha's cry was heard. Will he be okay? Luca was lying on the ground, his head buried in the dirt. Ilya laughed lightly and said, okay, she'll take the chance to learn something in tandem. MC asked, but would her friends mind? She replied, they can handle it. Each of them is quite capable. Dowd thought, well, of course, it's the main character's party. Ilya winked and said, so teacher, are they playing in pairs again? MC replied, not quite. They need another plus. At least one person. Trisha looked up and looked at him. At that moment, a voice rang out in the rector's office. Rector, for her generous permission, thank you very much. Adelante replied, nothing special. It's even interesting. For a saint to personally arrive as a guard? She has no idea what His Holiness Credo is thinking. He laughed and asked, what's on his mind? Lucien can't stay locked up forever. She took advantage of a routine ambassadorial mission to gradually emerge into the world. Even a saint needs to explore the world. Atalante thought, even though she was a saint, according to the report on her, she was the perfect vessel for a demon. She had to work hard to enroll the saint in Elfante. Removing her twin sister, Uria, was only the first step. And now he himself sends the saint here? What's the point, Priest Credo? Credo said, Lucien, this is a symbol for the Holy Empire. He will tell you honestly, It was not an easy decision for them either. Adelante spoke up. The reason for such drastic measures, the recent incident with the monster? He smiled and replied. Both he and the spy in Alphonte from among the priests. This is a serious blow for them too. Adelante asked, in such turmoil would the saint not be in danger? She mentally commanded him to take the bait. Credo replied, not at all, it's even for the best. She looked at him in surprise, and he said that if she truly was a saint of the empire, she should have the courage to face evil head on. On the contrary, they would like her to be assigned such tasks in Alphonte. He thought they had midterm exams soon. They were hoping she could help with the students' training. Adelante asked, what does he mean? Credo interrupted her and replied, he'll specify the details separately. Let her just know that all this is to eradicate the threat in Alphonte. Atalante said, Your Holiness, that's a bit impudent, don't you think? Credo laughed, and she said, Lucien, no, she's a saint. Whatever he wants from her, they don't have to participate. Credo asked again, who knows? If a saint so desires, that changes everything, right? He was sure this girl would be useful to them. He disconnected, and Atalante grabbed her head and said, it's terrible. She thought it was inhumane. This snake, Credo. She didn't expect the transfer of the saint to go smoothly, but the condition of making her a pawn of the empire? She remembered her words to doubt and thought, this is already hypocrisy, Adelante, sacrificing others for your own goals. She is no better. At that moment, Uriel was washing clothes in the river and wondering why he wasn't coming. How much time had passed, and he used to come around this time. This guy. She remembered how he said some time ago, today he defends himself perfectly. Cool. He'll drop by again tomorrow, so let her wait for him, okay? What should she bring tomorrow? Steak? Donuts? At this point, Uriel didn't think it was necessary to bring anything. Just let him be with her. That would be enough for her. She heard the priest's words. She is cursed, Uriel. She's disgusting to everyone, that's all. Uriel Greyhounder, an outcast in Alphante, a traitor to the Holy Empire. Didn't she accept this when she fled with the sword? What a terrible fate to kill everyone who comes near, but she was prepared for the consequences, wasn't she? This is the cursed life she chose. Her mind was clouded by delusions, but that didn't change reality. She was destined to be alone. Alone forever. Uriel clutched her chest in fear, and the priest said, when she was alone in the empty forest, like now, who was she waiting for? Who could come to her? Let her scream. Let her call for help. She didn't care. Suddenly, she heard the MC's voice interrupt the priest's words. Why was she crying? Did something happen while he was gone? The cookies she liked weren't available. Uriel happily turned around and rose from her knees when she saw Dowd. The system window reported that Uriel's interest level had risen from 1 to 4. Uriel said, he doesn't hate her, right? He doesn't find her disgusting, does he? MC asked, what's she even talking about? He came because he needs her help, but they'll have to get out of here, right? Uriel walked forward and happily said, anything. She cut the bag with her blade and asked for forgiveness. She just can't do otherwise. He won't hate her for this, right? She's asking. Anything but that. She'll do anything. Just don't let him go, please. She ran after MC, and he screamed. He would even be glad, but she leaves him no choice. Uriel screamed, sorry. After a while, they said at the academy, so they're starting the test. The task, reach the destination, starting from the Great Plains. Along the way, they are free to engage in fights with other students. The more necklaces they take, the higher their bonus score. Elia narrowed her eyes and said, Dowd, she's perplexed. The situation is too weird. MC suggested they talk later, but Elia screamed, no way now. What's this supposed to mean? What kind of weird inclinations are these? Uriel was following him, and Dowd said he could explain. Well, yeah, it certainly looks perverted from the outside, but Elia asked if she even understood. Uriel said, slightly embarrassed, she was the one who suggested walking like this. It's for safety and convenience. Elia made a face and thought, really? Or are they just playing games? And what about human dignity, you perverts? Cullivan asked MC to listen. He didn't know what kind of relationship he had with his sister, but he'd better clear up the misunderstanding right away before it escalated into something more. MC said, Elia, he doesn't know how this will sound, but she better not leave him. You can't get near her. Elia replied, she didn't really want to get involved. MC asked to trust him. It's purely for safety reasons. Seriously, there are circumstances that require keeping his distance from her. Elia said fine, but he shouldn't even think about putting a collar on her. If they're not waiting for anyone else, then they can start now. Dowd said, they're coming, Uriel. She replied, yes. After a while, Elia asked, by the way, what can she do? MC yelled, he told you, Elia, not to approach her. Elia screamed, but she's not coming any closer, you idiot. After a while, Talion exhaled and said, they almost got caught. Is everyone okay? Is anyone hurt? The guys answered, yes, they're holding up for now. Talion, even he couldn't handle that savage transfer. Talion gripped the handle of his spear and replied, if it weren't for him, even barrier magic wouldn't have saved them from being knocked out. The guy said it. That's right too. That psychopath looked like she was really ready to kill them. Why didn't they start with someone easier? Well, at least with Dowd. The guy suggested taking down that crook while they had the chance. It pisses him off so much that village idiot was taken into Alphante. He suggested lying in wait for him. Talion said, he's out. The guys asked, why? Yeah, enough of that. He pisses him off too. Talion replied, he used to irritate him, but not anymore. The guy screamed, what? Did he really convince him to? Talion replied, he just looked at it in a new way, okay? The world is full of strong people. At that moment, Lilu said, but there are even more weaklings. How come no one can pull it off? Fight, struggle, stand to the death. She can't feel it. How is this place even holding up? Damn Imperials. At that moment, Elnor appeared in front of her and started attacking. Lilu thought, who is this? Elnor released a stream of mana towards her and said she was showing off a bit too much for a transfer student. Lilu Garuda. She frowned and thought, that's it. Finally, someone worthy. Elnor said, excessive violence is unacceptable. She can't just pass by. Let her try to control herself. Lilu said, no. And what will she do to her? Elnor pointed a sword towards her and said, if this were a real battlefield, she would already be lying with a broken head. But now she will get off with just a warning. Lilu said, no, for her this is a battlefield. So let her pierce. Press hard. Since she has drawn her sword, she should be prepared to spill blood, right? She can't, even though she generously allowed it? Lilu screamed. Imperial rats are all the same in the end. Even in their tribe there are people like that. They have skills but no determination. Their loved ones are taken away from them, and they can only whine and do nothing. When she sees people like that, she just can't help herself. Elnor released her streams of dark mana, which surprised Lilu. She thought, Lilu, her tribe is not the whole world. The stronger she becomes, the wider and more the world around her opens up. He was right, father. It's damn huge. She pushed off the ground and rushed towards Elnor. She said, forced teleportation. Lilu froze in front of Elnor and then quickly disappeared. Lilu woke up in the office and said irritably, what do you mean she's eliminated? She just fought back. So this is how she plays, Madam President? She thought about it. Okay, it wasn't about the difference in skills. She was higher in level from the start. But why did she suddenly show killing intent? What is she hiding, Madam President? Is it because of what she said about the Imperials? That they lack determination? The guy looked at Lilu with fear and asked, how did she end up here? Lilu wondered, or was it because of what she said about them being powerless? Even when their loved ones are snatched from under their noses? She asked. She wondered who he was. The system window reported, he attracted Lilu Garuda's attention. MC screamed, what? Why all of a sudden? They haven't even crossed paths since that day. The system window reported, Elnor succumbed to its influence and revealed divine possession, wrath. Ilya turned around and asked, is he talking to himself, Dowd? At that moment, Yuria quickly attacked the opponents with her dagger, and shouts were heard everywhere. That swindler Dowd. Ilya, they will save her. Let her just wait. Ilya asked, Dowd, can they maybe stop for a second and clear up the misunderstanding? MC said, absolutely not. He's too busy reigning in Yuria. Someone shouted, we need to save her from that idiot. Dowd thinks he really needs to somehow deal with the stigma of being a swindler. Now, Ilya's obsessed fans won't give him a break. He looked at Yuria in fear and shouted, no. Ilya closed her eyes and asked, is this an exam or a crazy dream? Suddenly, a student appeared in front of them and screamed, Miss Ilya Krisonax. From the first day at the academy, he was fascinated by her beauty and strength. Dowd asked, and how does she get so many fans, Ilya? The student said, he doesn't know how this idiot is holding her back, but he swears by his title as a top 10 freshman, he will save her. And then he will treat her to dinner in the Eye of Twilight. MC said, well, the student council president tore everything apart there. MC said, to be precise, it was the Earl of Riverback. Ilya frowned and screamed, idiot! First of all, no one is holding her back by force. And this guy is not a swindler at all. The guy asked, then is he an idiot? Ilya grabbed her sword and answered this. The guy asked, can't you just say no? He is not going to fight her. Dowd thought the nightly faculty magic and theology. All the students gathered together. This is a great chance to level up your stats. At that moment, he ordered Calivan to get up. He needs his help. Come on, let him come out. Calivan said. He has no idea what's going on, but it doesn't look good. Someone screamed, young lady, heroine, please, let her just wait. They will save her. The system window reported, threat detected. The threat is not fatal. Desperate survival has been activated at rank A. MC asked, what the hell? Why doesn't he come out and just answer him? Calivan lay with his eyes closed and answered, because this is childish squabbles. Who does he even think he is? He's a guardian. Dowd said, it's true. By the way, a stalker has set his sights on his sister. Calivan woke up and screamed, Ilya is being stalked by a stalker? Let him show him. The system window reported, mind space skill has been activated. Buffs will be divided among nearby allies. Ilya swung her sword and tried to attack the stalker. The system window reported, desperate survival rank A has been distributed to everyone. Ilya screamed, fans like him can go straight to hell. The guy asked to wait. It's a stone golem. He'll break the sword or even get hurt. She quickly cut the golem down and the others were very surprised. MC thought, how creepy. Ilya asked in surprise, how did that happen? Dowd said happily, that's impressive. He thought the only downside to this skill was that it burned through his measly divine powers, so the buff would last a couple of attacks at most. The guy with the mace screamed loudly, even if she's a hero candidate, they won't let you protect such an idiot. Yuria rushed forward and attacked the guys, cutting through their weapons. She spread her arms in different directions and asked for forgiveness. She slightly. Ilya said, she may not be a hero, but those who don't even try to understand or listen to others are no better. She drew the tip of her sword along the ground and screamed, Vortex Guardian! She looked around, and MC thought, isn't that too much? It's a good thing his stats are only F rank. Calivan asked, What's going on? Was she always this strong? Wow. The system window reported that the group was winning. Dowd looked around and said he didn't think anyone was hurt. The system window reported that skill mastery had increased. MC said, well, there's nothing to worry about for them. He asked, where did he lose his mask? A loud scream was heard behind him, and Ilya turned around and sighed, saying, he's at it again, but being on the same team with him was more fun than she thought. At that moment, Luca said, well, it's already 9. Great job, guys. That's a solid result for first years. The guy said, that's right. They worked together great and everything went smoothly. Trisha replied, yeah, it went smoothly, but they weren't first. Someone asked, what, and how much is first place? Trisha replied, second place 15 pendants. Luca grinned and said, well, 5 more and they'll catch up. Trisha thoughtfully asked, is the map glitching or something? Luca asked, what's wrong? Trisha replied, second place isn't a team but one person? Collect 15 pendants alone? How is that even possible? Guys, has anyone heard the name Phenol Life? Okay, so how many is first place? Luca replied, no, and how are there so many monsters among their peers? Trisha answered in surprise, 100. 111, to be precise. Someone screamed loudly, what? What kind of team is that? The system window reported that the Squall skill had been acquired. If you accurately block an attack, you can reflect damage. MC said they were there. Ilya asked, will they get there? And the exam was over? Dowd asked again. Why is she asking him? She's an excellent student. Ilya sighed and said with displeasure, how annoying he is. Yuria walked behind them, smiling slightly. MC thought, in the original, a random event should happen here. What will it be? A monster worse than the last one? Or, he looked ahead and Ilya said, this is too much, even for an exam. Yuria sighed and widened her eyes in fear. She asked, sister? The system window reported, main quest, chapter 2, the Boy King. We must stop the rampaging bearer of the Curse of Weakness. Targets to protect. Lucian Greyhounder, Yuria Greyhounder. Ilya walked toward Lucian and asked, is this girl really powering an entire valley with her divine powers? Blessings in necklaces? Even teleportation? She grabbed her sword and said, but that's not Elfante's style at all. They're going to help her now. Suddenly, the Holy Empire's highest battle priest, Klein Garrison, appeared before her and said, no, dear student, the saint volunteered to serve. What right does she have to interfere? Klein noted that this was voluntary service to the saint. Out of respect for the aristocrat's will, it was best not to interfere, right? Let the saint speak for herself. Yuria wondered if someone had coerced her. Lucian replied that no, she was doing it because she wanted to. Ilya, perplexed, asked if she had volunteered to do such a terrible thing of her own free will. She wondered if she was questioning the saint's words. It was tantamount to insulting the will of the entire Holy Empire. A hero candidate of all people should understand this. The girl, with a serious expression, said she wasn't insulting, but merely wished to save someone who was suffering. Klein wondered if she insisted so much, he should beg her to stop. The protagonist wondered if he had known they would meet like this. One of the 3 dominant powers on the continent was the Holy Empire. The leadership has completely lost their minds, and contrary to common sense, is doing whatever they can, especially the High Priest. He's just as interested in demons as the Rector. And Saint Lucian is the Holy Empire's most valuable asset and a plaything in the High Priest's hands. Yuria and this girl are merely tools for him, serving the greater good. Here, the circumstances themselves are forcing her to rage. Fight a furious vessel? He said they were people first and foremost. He believed the saint needed a break. Klein replied that she would remain until the 2nd and 3rd arrived. Until then, they should wait. The protagonist began to wonder if the reason they had acted so quickly was most likely Elnor. The monster attack had caught their attention, and the purification incident had finally convinced them. They were certain that Elnor, caught in the middle of both events, was somehow involved. If Yuria also goes berserk, the High Priest will start interfering in Elfante's affairs. Although she already understood everything, right? Then what choice are we talking about? After that, MC threw a gauntlet at the knight. Klein, perplexed, asked what it was. He wondered why he thought the Holy Empire didn't have such traditions. They challenged people to duels like that. Let him come to him. Ilya, perplexed, asked what duel. The guy asked why he should agree. The protagonist said to come and fight him. Let Ilya help the saint. She needs to go to the infirmary. Klein warned that if he took another step, it would escalate into a global conflict. MC replied that then he would tell everything they did with the saint. The guy asked who he even was. He replied that he was the son of a little-known baron. What did that matter to him? Klein said he was of high rank and couldn't engage in duels with just anyone. The protagonist asked, then, why had he drawn his sword? The hero candidate, Ilya, was standing behind him, so why was he wary of her? He wondered if he should just strike out to resolve this situation. The protagonist drew his sword and noticed that he had already drawn his own. Klein said that the rude fellow could use a word of advice. He tried to strike, but MC counterattacked with lightning speed and used the excellent strike skill. The attack sent the man flying. After some time, Atalante, having learned all this, said she was even curious about what was going on in his head. The protagonist replied that she herself had told him to do as he saw fit. She remarked that she didn't recall ever telling him to get into trouble with the Holy Empire. He said it wasn't a problem, it was a noble duel. The saint got angry and attacked. The girl replied that he wasn't just any saint, he was a high-ranking priest. The protagonist said it was no big deal. He had immunity from House Tristan. The imperial family would answer for his actions. Atalante pointed out that she was from a holy empire. Their hands were tied. Why was he fighting this duel? Was he so confident in his own abilities? He replied that she had ordered him to seduce demonesses, and Yuria was one of the candidates. He had wooed her about 50%. The problem was, she had witnessed that scene. The girl, perplexed, asked where she had come from. The MC replied that he had dragged her there to secure a commanding first place in the exam. She herself understood that half measures weren't enough to attract the attention of the vessels, and saving the world from demons was supposedly their priority. Atalante remarked that he should at least think about himself and not about international issues. The protagonist said he had no problems, not with the rector, nor with the hero candidate. She replied that she was talking about normal student life. Really, he should make friends and mind his own business. He wondered if she would forgive him, but he'd already screwed up on that. Atalante said that since the duel report had already reached the Holy Empire, the High Priest could intervene personally. She didn't know what he was planning, but this guy was dangerous. He better think twice. Sometime later, Lucian was sitting in her room. Yuria came in and froze. She silently started to get out of bed, and the girl, frightened, told her not to come near her. Because of the curse of separation, if she came near, she could get hurt. In an instant, a dagger and chain flew from her back, but Lucian deftly caught it and replied that it would be wonderful since they were twins. Sometime later, spectators gathered in the stadium to watch the upcoming duel. The host announced the following rules. This is just a duel. Lethal blows are prohibited. If one of the participants sustains serious damage, the duel immediately ends, and the one remaining on their feet is considered the winner. Otherwise, the duel will continue until one side surrenders. Was everything clear to the participants? MC pondered that to delay Yuria's demonization, Lucian must remain alive. Otherwise, the possession and curse will consume her mind, and she will go mad. For this reason, the duel was inevitable. The Holy Empire will continue to persecute Lucian. He must stop it. With this duel, they must achieve this. Atalante mused that although Archbishop Credo could not come in person, he would observe the battle in this manner. A hologram of the Archbishop himself appeared nearby. Klein grabbed his sword and said it was too late to beg for mercy, but all was not lost. The sooner he surrendered, the fewer bones he would break. Had he heard that? Herman said excitedly, "No problem. Just let him surrender as soon as possible." The protagonist noted his curiosity. He had just been about to say the same thing. A little earlier, the Archbishop had pointed out that he could not attack with killing intent. Klein asked, perplexed, what he meant by that. He replied that the harder he struck, the more furiously he would strike back. That was his ability. The boy wondered if such absurd abilities really existed. The Archbishop said he had encountered something similar before, though he didn't expect to see it again. Klein asked, so he would suffer from his own attacks? He replied that killing intent alone wasn't enough. He must suppress any hostility to teach his arrogant aristocrat a lesson. The battle priest now strengthened his body and began a rapid attack. The protagonist activated the skill transfer. A system window appeared, stating that the skill Divine Spirit Wrath was available. Klein delivered a powerful blow, but he quickly counterattacked, forcing the boy to parry the blow. A system window appeared, notifying that the Seal of Fallen Heaven was reacting. Demonic energy was flowing toward the Seal of Fallen Heaven. Suddenly, a rift appeared in the sky above them, and Elnor emerged from it. The protagonist thought that when she transformed, everything around her froze. He himself was holding on only by his divine power. Klein wondered in disbelief. What was this? A terrible pressure was exerting itself upon him. The girl hovered above them and asked, "Is he fighting again? It would be better if he stayed away. He would get hurt less." She was upset, but she would repay him. She touched his sword and instantly transferred some of her power. The protagonist began to deflect every attack with lightning speed. Klein, perplexed, thought that it was only for a moment, but there was definitely something there. How could he even block his attack? Suddenly, he threw the sword, delivered a powerful blow, and remarked that, as he said, "You can use anything as long as it doesn't kill." The priest was thrown into the air by such a powerful blow. The Archbishop caught him with his magic, and said that while he was busy, the education at El Fonte had exceeded all his expectations. MC asked if he could say something since he had won. This guy was brazenly pursuing a saint. He was asking him to stop him. Suddenly, the entire audience began shouting in shock. "What did he say?" he asked. "He's sniffing something out here, right? You shouldn't waste his energy. This is his first and last warning." The spectators began shouting, "What the hell is going on? What kind of insolence in front of the Archbishop? How does Atalante teach its students that they allow themselves such liberties?" Hatanwu Jewel, the leader of the Blue Dragon clan, exclaimed with a smile that not only was he pitting a trained knight against a green boy, but he was also harassing a saint. He was a true pervert. A system window appeared, notifying the villain that he had taken notice. Hatan asked if even children were judging him. Shouldn't he retire? The spectators began shouting, "Watch your language. This is already a threat to his holiness." The Archbishop asked, "So what? If he doesn't like it, let him go out and fight himself." The protagonist inquired what he would do. He replied that he understood. Even if it was just a petty duel, he would do as he pleased. He's not only strong, but also depraved. He had to give him credit. A moment later, the Archbishop and all his minions vanished. Everyone, in wild shock, began shouting that the Holy Empire was retreating. After the teleportation, the Archbishop called out to Saras and instructed her to plant a spy among Dowd's entourage from El Fante. He reflected on how he had managed to attract the attention of 3 countries with a single duel. The longer he watches, the more he reminds him of that guy. Meanwhile, in the arena, the host asked in confusion, Have they left? Well then, Dowd is declared the winner. Hatan smiled and remarked that he liked the guy. He'd make a fine warrior. He tossed him the lion metal artifact, which increases survivability and physical strength, and then told him to drop by the Forge of Discord sometime. He'd be a welcome guest there. He eagerly awaits the return of that terrifying power he demonstrated earlier. The tribal alliances are done. It's time for him to go. MC wondered, surprised, that in the original storyline, this item was intended for Chapter 3. He'd been recognized by the Tribal Alliance's strongest madman. After some time, Adelante said she had one question. Had he used the vessel's power again to win the duel? The protagonist agreed, adding that he'd simply been lucky. She noted that the Archbishop and Hatan probably realized this, so rumors would soon start spreading. All sorts of people would start clinging to him. She advised him to prepare himself mentally. She thought things would get rowdy soon. The protagonist replied that he understood. After a while, a system window appeared, notifying him that the main quest had been completed. Echo of Blessing +1, Seed of Evil +1. He reflected that he had already collected 4 Seeds of Evil. Such a rare currency could be used to purchase some pretty unusual skills. For example, something like this. MC bought the skill Foresight, which activates once per day and allows one to see enemy stats. He reflected that the information obtained with this skill is not distorted in any way, so there are no downsides. He needed to experience this. The protagonist, sitting under a tree, began to look around and thought that there was no point in checking Trisha, just like the professor. He noticed Elnor and thought that she would be an ideal target. Of course, he would first want to look at the stats of this girl or Elia. After all, they are the main characters in the story. MC activated the skill with a smile and began to look at her. A system window appeared, which stated that Elnor is the vessel of a gray demon. Strength S, Dexterity S, Durability S, Luck C, Authority A+. She contains 1 demonic fragment. The degree of possession is 80%. The degree of corruption is 2%. He was surprised to think that her possession was as high as 80%. Surely the incident with Riverback influenced this. The only positive is that the degree of corruption is only 2%. If both stats are high, she will turn into a demon. Suddenly, Elnor approached him and asked what he was doing. The protagonist exclaimed in fear, "How did she know he was there?" She replied that she felt a strange gaze. Okay, since they've already met, she has something for him. The person he asked her to keep an eye on is a complicated person. MC asked if she'd found him. The girl agreed, adding that she'd already established his main travel routes. But from now on, he'd have to do everything himself. She already had a lot on her plate. She was the student council president. He apologized and remarked that she'd done a great job. It was a tough target. Elnor replied that her position had been a big help, right? She'd heard the Holy Empire delegation was expanding. This had never happened before. Did he know anything? The protagonist chuckled and said not really. She handed him the documents and told him to try to find out. They recorded all the target's movements during the midterms. He took the documents and exclaimed that it was simply incredible. The protagonist reflected on how, in the original game, he had to track their movements himself. He hugged her and exclaimed that she was smart. Now he owed her. Come out. The target is in the clock tower now? Then he went there. Elnor, shocked, remained silent and blushed. After some time, MC arrived at the clock tower and thought about how the target was sitting there until 7 p.m. He knew he had infiltrated the academy with the saint. Given his nature, he usually avoids any interaction with the outside world, but even he needs air sometimes. He ran to the roof of the tower, where he was met by the boy king, Valkasis, who remarked that he could use some stamina. His name is Dowd, right? The protagonist, out of breath, asked in confusion if he knew him. He replied that he should sit down and catch his breath first. The seer had told him to contact him. How could he not know? The protagonist wondered if he had sent him knowing about him. Valkasis said that his spy had done a great job. In fact, he'd been waiting here for several days. He's in no position to go looking for him himself. They're enemies after all, aren't they? He thought about how his seer was originally just a regular demon worshipper. He'd never interfered in anything like this. The guy told him that the seer's verdict on him was that he would be the biggest obstacle to their goal. Let him answer him. Would he stand in his way? MC thought about how he already knew who he was and what he did, and he was giving orders even though they'd never even met. Could he really have the same method as him? Valkasis had said, let him answer him. Would he stand in his way? He wondered how much he knew and how far he'd gotten in his investigation. He thought he'd already gathered enough information about them, and he came to him knowing who he was, right? The protagonist replied that at least he was sure they weren't acting out of malice. Even after they turn everyone in the academy into undead, and even if they plan to rule them afterwards. Valkasis agreed and added that it would happen in 3 days. It seemed the prophet was very interested in him. He was still trying to figure out who he really was. He thought that one day he would meet all the chosen ones. The protagonist asked why he was telling him all this. He was the last emperor of the Armada, a man who had absorbed all his subjects, trapping them within his own body with forbidden magic. They were enemies, and an enemy shouldn't reveal too much. He didn't like it when people messed up his cards. Valkasis replied that he had no intention of messing up his cards. He just wanted everything to be fair. The game should be fair, shouldn't it? He didn't care how much he knew. He still had no advantage. And he had only come to him to make sure he wasn't a coward. MC thought that was true, but not only for that. He used his vision skill and began examining it. Valkasis, with a calm face, said, let him look carefully. A system window appeared, indicating that the forbidden technique was still in his body. 2,134,423. The protagonist reflected on the fact that a forbidden technique was ancient magic, having nothing to do with mana, spells, or divine power. Any forbidden technique was performed at the cost of human lives. The boy smiled and noted that such a technique was difficult to use in battle. The protagonist replied that he knew this. People usually didn't talk about it. Then he would be honest too. Valkasus said it was noble. He wanted to personally verify the accuracy of the prophet's assessment. Frankly, he didn't take it personally, but he didn't see him as a serious obstacle. MC offered to make a deal and said that in 3 days he could turn the academy into undead. Let him do it. He wouldn't interfere. He'd rather fight him with everything he had. Valkasus asked if he wouldn't falter even after seeing his forbidden techniques. He replied that in 3 days he was going to save him and his entire empire. The boy smirked and remarked that if he lost, he would absorb his body too. After that, he instantly disappeared. The protagonist nervously wondered, what if he lost? No, if he wanted to win, he couldn't even think about losing. That was the main rule. At that moment, Lucien came outside and asked if she'd changed. Yuria agreed, sitting by the bed. She asked if she liked the outfit. The girl sheepishly replied that she'd never worn anything like it before, and it embarrassed her. Lucien told her to take what she wanted. Considering how much she'd endured while acting as her shield charm, it was the least she could do. Yuria blushed and replied that she would gratefully accept it. She lit a cigarette and told her to relax for at least a minute while she was there. The girl thought she'd thought her heart would stop because of this curse of separation. She was glad she was still pure. Of the two of them, she was the one rotting from the inside. Yuria picked up the collar and grinned. Lucien asked what she was doing there. She replied that it was a gift from Mr. Dowd. He told her to always wear it if she wanted them to continue getting along. He also said he wouldn't see her without it, so she tried it on to see if it suited her. She didn't consider it more valuable than her gift. It's just that if she didn't wear it, Mr. Dowd would stop coming to see her. Let her not misunderstand. Lucien angrily asked where that blasphemer was now. After a while, the protagonist himself came to them and explained that it was a misunderstanding. He admitted that it might seem strange, but it was done to maintain distance from her curse of separation. A leash was the first thing that came to hand. He didn't have time to think. Lucien replied that this girl was her sister. They were reunited after a long separation. She is her family. The protagonist replied that he knew this well. She pointed out that this was the problem. How did he know this? At first, she was angry about the collar, but after listening to him, she realized that he was much more suspicious than he seemed. How could someone from a seedy barony know about their relationship? And how did he manage to defeat a holy knight in close combat? She even wondered where he got such knowledge and skills. MC thought that, of course, this was from his experience playing the original. He replied that he couldn't tell everything. It was the rector's order. He would say one thing. He was on her side, and of course on Yuria's side. Lucien said that for now she would accept this answer. He fought for her, helped her escape the bishop's clutches, and even helped her sister. That was true, but that wasn't enough. Even if he wasn't ready to reveal his identity, she needed to know what he was planning and how well he knew. She needed more information. The protagonist replied that Lucien and Yuria were key figures in the bishop's plan. It was called the Homunculus Project. She hadn't received the title of saint at birth. She was created, assembled from various materials. Her divine power was artificial, and Yuria fed and strengthened it, all for the sake of the paradise the bishop had envisioned. A paradise where he would judge and rule. But everything went wrong after Yuria's escape. He won't stop. He's only retreated temporarily while they're here. They needed to use this brief moment of calm to properly prepare. Lucien, perplexed, asked, "Who the hell is he?" After some time, she brought him to the Star Heart artifact and explained that it was a divine device that powered the Academy's protective barrier. It was said to be a relic left to them by a seraph. She had used her status as a saint to obtain it. But did he really think it would help them? The protagonist agreed and said he wanted to ask something. She criticized him for dragging a human around on a leash, and how was she any better? Lucien, holding Yuria's leash, exclaimed that it was all wrong. She couldn't ignore the curse of separation. If she pretended to accompany her for the exorcism, she wouldn't arouse suspicion. The MC considered that fair, but students generally didn't frequent the shrine. He suggested that Yuria remove her hood. Let the saint wait outside. The protagonist turned to Ilya and told her to come out as well. She declined with a smile, adding that she was tasked with protecting the saint and keeping an eye on him. Lucien agreed, noting that she couldn't trust him yet. The heart of the star was made of the same material as Yuria's sword. It was an artifact forbidden to touch, let alone even approach. Having the hero candidate nearby would make her feel better. After all, she had brought him here out of her faith in the creator who had directed her to him. The protagonist began to wonder if he could understand the saint's position. He should at least thank her for bringing him here in the first place. Lucien handed the leash to the girl and asked her to take care of her sister. Ilya agreed and thanked her for her trust. He thought that demons can freely penetrate the human world, but with angels everything is different. They were required to abide by the rules to maintain balance, so they couldn't simply interfere, just like the angels he had met earlier. However, for the heroine, things were different. Lucien began to leave, noting that she would wait outside. If something went wrong, Yuria could protect herself. right? She nodded with a smile, agreeing. MC reflected that a hero possessed the purest and strongest heart among humans. Through it, angels could influence this world. That's why the saint trusted Ilya implicitly, even if she was still only a candidate. The girl herself reflected on the high expectations placed on her. Even though she was still a candidate, she felt one step closer to becoming a heroine. She wouldn't allow any accidents to happen here. She smiled and said that Yuria shouldn't worry, she would protect her. At that moment, the protagonist struck the artifact with his sword, causing a scratch. Lucian, standing outside, mused that since he knew about the homunculus project, he must have a very extensive intelligence network. She can't completely trust him, but it seems Yuria and the hero candidate are listening to him for good reason. He doesn't strike her as someone who acts recklessly. After the protagonist struck the artifact, an A1 and a 1 rank angel appeared before him. He was surprised to find himself thinking he hadn't expected a high-ranking angel to appear.